Good morning, everybody. Welcome to June 24th, Manatee County Public Workshop. I want to call this meeting officially to order. And we did have some agenda amendments to this morning's workshop, just adding, after we publish, just adding the presentation, some tweaks to the presentations that we will see this morning. So I'll move to public comment. We do have one, and that is Steve Zickafoos. Come on down.
Good morning, board members.
Morning.
And Interim Superintendent Chapman. Thank you for your patience as you hear my name called one more time. I want to see this work through. Like Mr. Tatum said a few weeks ago, this is the only place you can openly discuss things, to go ahead and be on the table. So I use these 3-minute opportunities to update and communicate in an open forum so we can keep moving forward. So thanks for hearing my name one more time. Over the last several months, you've shown a willingness to engage in thoughtful dialogue, ask hard questions, and pursue a path toward equity that acknowledges every public school student in Manatee County. As someone who has worked in the district for over 30 years, I've seen that good things happen when we come together for the kids, and this moment is just like that. Your decision to begin sharing the half-penny sales tax with charter students and right the wrong is a step in the real progress, and I want to recognize that. That said, I hope you allow me to respectfully raise 3 concerns, not as criticism, but as an invitation to keep the conversation honest and solution-focused. First, the Charter Student Sales Tax Action Plan and related procedures on tonight's agenda deducts more than $12 million annually in debt service tied to the district's 2017 sales tax bond before funds are distributed. That significantly reduces the overall amount of charter students can receive. I understand the requirement here, make no bones about it, but the effect is clear. Charter school students who had no say in the original debt are now helping pay it down. Second, with this debt service already off the top, charters begin at a disadvantage. Making the phased rollout of 50, 60, 80 over 3 years feels not just slow, but needlessly cautious. Third and most importantly, the language allowing future debt to be deducted from the surtax raises deep concern. This opens the door to ongoing reductions in charter student funding based on enrollment, or not based on enrollment or equity, but on future decisions charter schools, students, and parents have no voice in. If we're truly moving toward lasting fairness, this loophole could undo it before it even begins. And Superintendent Chapman, I want to thank you personally for stepping into this role with a commitment to collaboration. Your openness has not gone unnoticed. We know that these are complex issues. We're not asking for perfection overnight, just fairness, clarity moving forward. Board, your vote tonight matters. But what happens after the vote matters just as much. Let's continue to work together to close the gaps, to ensure the safety of our community, and provide every child in Manatee County the support they need to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's jump into our workshop items. First item is the 25-26 budget for the millage. So I believe that is Mr. Jensen.
I believe Ms. Sellers will take.
Oh, we'll start. All right.
Yes. Good morning. Okay,
Good morning.
so this millage workshop is obviously part of our themed budget for this year, Ready 2026 budget. And to begin with, we're just going to touch on the ballot language. Today, I have with me Kathy Miley. She is our finance director. The finance team is that group that oversees the budget and the transactions related to the 1 mil voted referendum. Later on today, when we do the general fund budget workshop, I also have here with us today, she'll be sitting with me for the next workshop, is also Gina Maliniak. She is our budget director for the district, and she handles that general fund big budget as well, or does. So moving on, I'm going to first start our workshop with the ballot language. This is the language that the district looks to for guidance in the allowability for how these expenditures have, one, been voted on by the taxpayer, and this is what we use to follow to make sure that we were in compliance with what the voters had voted in for the use of this fund. So one is the school safety and security. We've also got recruiting, retaining teachers and the staff. A third item is the student achievement through more instructional time and the support for that. A fourth one is early literacy programs. Fifth is career and technical education. Then STEM. There's also the visual and performing arts, athletics, the public charter schools proportionate share that is included in to give them as well, and that there's an oversight by an independent citizens committee for the proper use of the voted millage referendum funds. Here on this slide, what we're doing is giving you an overview of where we start with our projected budget. Now, mind you, this is not a month-end, fiscal year-end yet, so this is still preliminary. But at this point, what we have done is we started looking at our projected budget using that June 1st tax assessor's estimated school tax value for the 25-26 budget. For comparison, we have included that same value, that June 1st value, back when we had the 24-25 fiscal year budget. Now, to note here, there has been an increase in that property value of $2.68 billion. That is 3.4% increase in the value of the property. We are currently, we also budget the revenue that would be applicable for availability to use at 96%. What I did want to point out is for the 25-26 fiscal year, the district is having to include in a 2% commission to the tax collector, which was not budgeted in the 24-25 fiscal year because we were unaware that the tax collector was going to start taking a commission on the voted millage. They started taking out a 2% in December 2024. This obviously reduces the commission. It wasn't reflected in the 24-25 budget, but through the month of May, the tax collector has taken $1.45 million in revenue for their commission on that. This wasn't something that we had conveyed in our ballot language.
Has he ever before?
They had never done that before. We did reach out to surrounding school districts, and this is not a commission that is being taken out on their voted millage referendum as the Manatee County tax collector is doing.
I had a conversation with Andrew Messina from FSBA. Obviously, the last several weeks we've been talking about the superintendent search, and I brought this up. And she does not know of any school district that has this commission taken out, and does believe that we potentially need to put this as a legislative item on not only FSBA, but even each individual district, just to have some clarification on this. I will say that I've been in talks with Mr. Burton, and we are going to sit down and discuss what this is. I encourage everybody else on the board, at least, to do the same thing with him. So, because there was no warning, there was no, hey, we're doing this, it just happened. I do have some other board members lit up to speak, Kennedy, Spray, and Felton. So, Mr. Kennedy? Did you take
I'm a little.
I just wanted.
I appreciate that I was informed about this before today, so this is not a surprise. But I do have some questions about how, Chad, you just said we were not informed. They just started taking the office just started taking it. Attorney Dye, do you have an opinion here? Is this legal? Do they have a statutory justification to
It's
take?
in the statute, yeah.
Which statute?
So why is every county in Florida not taking? Why is every tax collector and was Mr. Burton the first one to catch on to this?
I can't respond to that.
Oh, well, you don't know.
No, I don't know why it suddenly began. But it's, I've reviewed the statute and it appears, and the tax collector apparently reviewed it as well and feels strong about their position that they're entitled to it.
They did indicate that when we had the most recent filing for the tax form that was filed, I believe in November, that particular item at the recommendation of the tax collector is listed as a SC14 tax, whereas in all of the past years, it was listed as a SC12, which the rest of the taxes are all grouped in there, and where the Board of County Commissioners pays the 2% commission. But in this past November, when we were completing the form, the tax collector asked our group to put it in the SC14. And they are saying that based on where that is placed in on the certification, that is why they are able to take it says in the statute up to 2%. So this is where they're taking
Just one
Yeah.
more.
that.
So is the tax collector's office taking this 2% from the half-penny sales tax, from all the levies the county does? And taking it out of that too?
We're only seeing that being taken out on the voted mill.
I have asked.
The village, yeah.
I've asked if they're taking it anywhere else, and I don't really get a response from any board account. I mean, there's no yes, they're taking it out of the ad valorem from the county because the county pays the salary anyways, right? So why would you take your own commission from your own self?
Right.
Probably not going to do that.
Yeah.
And so but as far as anything from like CDDs, fire, etc.,
Any levy like
other
that,
municipalities, I don't know that answer. Like from Holmes Beach or
Yeah,
Brady Beach,
yeah.
whatever. I don't know that answer. We would have to ask their financial department. Hey, just like we did, we got a receipt that says here's the commission, for that. And I will say and I know we got some other commenters, but I went back and saw because the county was in the budget process the last several weeks. The tax collector's budget for 2026 did not go up from last year. It is the same exact budget amount they're asking for. And and I have this slide that is obviously public facing. It was on there. So board, I'll send it to Laura, and then she can send it around. So you don't have to go hunt for it. But it basically is the same exact $19,250,384 is the exact budget for 25 and 26. And under 25, he has no money that says BCC adjustments. I'm imagining that's Board of County Commission adjustments. Changes based upon ad valorem. There is zero for 25. For 2026, it's the exact amount he's billed us. And so then it shows at the very bottom of this budget an extra 1.4 million, but he doesn't show that he's spending it. It shows revenue coming in, but he's not spending it because the amount says 19.25. So there's definitely again, I don't know exactly what's happening. We're gonna have a meeting and a discussion, but yeah, I mean.
So
you
you've
guys-
already got something on the calendar to
We're trying.
sit down
We're
with?
working right now to get something on the calendar.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, Ken and I. But by all means, 5 of us go meet with them all 5 separate times. That's a little bit different than just one person, right?
Sure.
So that's up to you guys if you want to do that too.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Bray?
Okay, you said that they had you file this under it was under SC 12, and they asked you to do it under SC 14. When was that? And explain that a little bit to me, expand on it.
Well, I do know that you look at, if you're a resident of Manatee County and.
Gina, will you just move that mic over to yeah, you can pull it there, yeah.
So if you're a resident of Manatee County and you received your tax bill, you'll notice in prior years, the discretionary .748 mil and the voted mil were on the same line. And they were added together as 1.748. My understanding was the state said if it's a voted mil, you should really show it separate on your tax form. So if you look at, a bill that would your bill that came out this year, you'll see the two are separated.
Gotcha.
So I think that's part of why they're classifying it as this SC 14, where previously it was SC 12 because it was all together. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Happened, and when they broke it out, it brought more visibility that they could take this commission.
So SC, school, is that SC is SC 14? What's the acronym?
I don't know what
know.
the SC stands for. It's just the number on the form. There's also a SC 13. There's different categories that the taxes or the millage is listed under when they collect it.
So, so they requested that you list it as a separate line item.
'Cause it was
When we
voted.
submitted, this is what our tax rates are gonna be.
Mm-hmm.
We're asking you to separate that one out. Did they take out?
The state did.
Yeah, we've always separated it in our board work, and
Right.
when you approve the millage,
Right.
you're always approving each piece of the millage separately. So it's always been broken out. It was their tax forms that didn't break it out,
That
that
combined
grouped the
Their
voted
tax
mill.
forms didn't. And
Yeah.
They actually called
Yeah.
it like school tax or something like that before. It was grouped all together.
It was grouped, the discretionary millage .748 plus the voted millage of 1 was on one line
Right,
on your
one
tax.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But then you said the
remember seeing
state is now requiring tax collectors
understanding-
to separate the two.
Was that they were
So that
asked
people
to
see this
separate.
is an extra 1 mil.
Yes.
And here's your standard. Okay.
Right.
it. Okay, for illegal, what Florida statute does that say that they can do this?
Oh, it's been emailed.
It's
to,
I don't,
212.
what is it?
I don't have it at my fingertips.
It's 212:32. I can get you that. We've looked at this language
I don't have it.
several times
Yeah.
and tried to communicate with the tax collector's office about it. I'm not as confident as Mr. Dye that it's as clear as all of that. But it's certainly.
It was solely a tax collector's decision to
Correct.
do this, not directed by the county commission?
I can't say about whether it was directed by the county commission, but it was a tax collector decision to take this commission from this collection.
And they've never taken commission from any other line item before?
Not from us.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
I mean,
not to us.
this to me
When-
is just a little ludicrous that they would do this.
Right, but I inquired to the tax collector, and one of his individuals did reply back that it was a statutory interpretation and local implementation is how they quoted to me why they were taking it.
Chair?
Yeah.
I just want to clarify. All I've done is reviewed the correspondence from the tax office of the basis of why they are claiming it. And I reviewed the statute, and I could see what they were basing it on. I didn't determine that they were right or wrong.
So it's
I
one of
could
those
see there was-
statutes that could be interpreted in a favor of either person, how they read it.
yes, but I could see their logic in how they were interpreting it.
As I read it, I'm no attorney, but I agree with you. I think that there is logic in to charge the commission. I think I read the statute more like it's for extra, like the CDDs and different
Yes.
things like that, more than a true ad valorem from the district.
Right.
But again, they definitely, I feel like there is some, now also 2%, the language says up to 2%.
Right.
So my question is, my thought process is, and I'll just be honest, and I'll tell Mr. Burton this when we see him, with the growth and the things happening, like I get needing more staff to do the same job because there's that many more people in the county, et cetera. But this 1.4%, and when you look at his budget from 25-26, the increase that he's taking from us is 10% of his budget. 10%. I mean, I don't know, you know, it's crazy. So anyways,
Well, so when you plan on going to see him, tell them that there's other board members. Just go ahead and book it and let me know. I'll be there to talk to him as well, because this is crazy. I mean, there was no forewarning, and then all of a sudden we're being
Agreed.
told at a briefing, by the way, this is what the tax collector, I didn't realize the tax collector had that kind of leverage over us collecting what we need. And my second thing for you too is, 90, voted millage at 96% of people who paid, I understand that. What was it last year or the year before? Did we get 99? Did we get 96? Did we get 98? Do we ever know what that ends up year over year?
So we've been looking at what that impact is, because we always have to budget at 96%. You don't know who
Right.
will pay and who hasn't. So far for this year, due to the amount of, it's less than what has been collected in the past in our projections. And this is mainly due to different taxpayers needing to file for
Extensions?
yeah, well, some didn't pay for the hurricane
Right,
impact. So there were refunds that were given back to different taxpayers. And part of that does trickle down to the impact on the district's collection of those taxes. So we have seen a lesser impact. You don't have any numbers right now that you can mention?
No, but it is going to be less than 96%.
I know in the general fund, it's probably gonna be around 2 to 3 million less than we budgeted.
Okay. Okay. Because that's just interesting to
another
me
piece.
that, you know, when we're doing this every year, I'd like to see from 24 to 25, we projected 96, but we collected 97. From, 22, 23, we projected 96, but we collected 98. You know, because that's 2% or 1% or even 0.5% could be quite a bit of revenue. So I'd like to see that historical.
Right.
If you had that, that would be nice.
And we could work on that. We also end up seeing, when we have our projections, we do end up having and seeing collections from years past too. So we end up having to split that out when we look at that actual collections for that particular fiscal year.
Right.
Because we do end up, and they go back actually several years, people actually paying some of those taxes.
Right,
in
that'd be
prior years
nice to
that we might see just this year instead.
Right, I like to see that,
Okay,
in the future. I'm not saying you gotta do that now,
right.
but next time we do this, I'd like to see, okay, we projected this, but we collected that.
Okay.
But, yeah, the tax collector thing, that's a little, a commission. Okay,
Mr. Tatum?
that's just crazy.
After I was listening to the conversation, I don't expect you to be an expert on the county budget. Did I hear somebody say, or was it intimated that that money actually goes into the county budget? That it's not, doesn't go like, does the tax collector get its money from the
Yes.
county budget?
So what I said was that
Mm-hmm.
the tax collector's budget
Mm-hmm.
does come from the county.
So that commission that he's holding on to, it's not like, it doesn't go into the tax collector.
I don't, I don't know,
It could
like,
go to the county and it's just, they're just getting some more revenue and then it's a way of getting more revenue for the county as opposed to going right to his, I'm just curious.
yeah, I don't, your guess is as good as mine.
Right.
Yeah,
And I
okay.
wouldn't have
What I was saying, when I referenced it that you heard, was
Mhm.
what I was saying to Mr. Kennedy, reply of when he asked,
Mhm.
are other municipalities, et cetera, being
Yeah.
taxed, or taking the commission out?
Mhm.
And he's not, there, from what I've found, there's no commission being charged for the ad valorem from the county, because the county pays the salary anyways, unless I'm mistaken.
On this particular tax that you're talking about, or commission, the statute says it goes direct to the tax collector.
Okay.
It
Doesn't go back to the,
doesn't pass go and doesn't collect $200. It goes right to the tax collector's office.
gotcha.
Which, you know, it'd be interesting for him to at least justify what he's gonna,
Sure, yeah.
you know, I mean, if you need 3 more people because the population of the county has grown by 10%, but, you know, show us that you need the money instead of just taking the max,
Sure.
so to speak.
Well,
you know.
so a great example. Listen, we're only talking about the county budget here because there's a county entity that's affecting our budget. But, you know, the sheriff gave his budget, right? The tax collector, the supervisor of elections, everybody goes in front of the county and gives their budget.
Right.
And so the sheriff said, hey, we've got X amount of new people in here. I need X amount of new deputies, and they don't figure out how to get that money by taking it from another entity that's taxing for their,
Right.
you know, like, so that's why I feel like with the tax collector, if he was going to say, hey, I need 2 or 3 more people to do all this because there's too many people, then go to the county who gives you your money and say, hey, I need more money to run my department. Just like if construction here or instruction or HR, you know, they come to us and say, hey, we need more money in our department. I don't know why. So that's my issue is you're taking from us to fill something for you that you've never done before. Why aren't you going back to the entity that creates your budget and gives you your revenue to ask them for more money?
And the
know what
answer
I mean?
probably is because if he's watching, or I mean, because he can, right? Because
Sure,
I mean, if we found a way, and probably legally, that we could,
potentially, yeah.
you know, get 2 more percent. Like, no, you actually have to give us 98% because of statute 125.7-9. You have to give us 97.5%, 96%. We would probably go, yeah, we want it, so give it to. I don't know. It's one of those legal things, right? That
Yeah.
if he can, and we'd probably do the same thing. But yeah, it's definitely worth having. I would just like to see, what are you going to use the money for? I mean, if you can justify it,
I
then
can
fine.
find
But
it.
it
Sure.
does seem like a lot of money. You know, like you said, he's not taking it from any other entities in the county. So
Because the reality is, the 1.5 million that leaves here is leaving teachers, the programming we can do with STEM, arts, security, athletics. Like that 1.5 million doesn't just like, oh, we don't like it's coming out of what the millage pays for.
And it's also coming out of the charter schools share as well.
Well, sure,
too.
of course, it comes out
Taking
everybody's, right? Everybody
Right.
that gets something from the millage.
And we do have, at the end of the fiscal year, once there's a closing, the actual collections for each fiscal year does get posted on the website, on the referendum page. So 23-24 is out there. We just don't have 24-25 actual collections out there, which this is the year that is seeing less collected
Right.
because
Because
of
of hurricane.
of the hurricanes and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But it will eventually, after we do the closing and we bring that to the board, we'll be having that on the website as well, too.
Were you done, Mr. Tatum?
yeah, I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Kennedy, Ms. Felton?
Yeah, just one more time. Attorney Doc, could you, when you get a chance, could you send us that statutory citation? I'm looking now,
I
and
can't find it.
It's,
I'm in 212.0305.
I made a mistake. Mr. Chair, if I may
Yeah.
correct that. It's 192.
Yep.
.091, subparagraph 2,
Yep.
sub 2.
Okay, thank you. I'll go find that.
And if I might, Chair.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a question someone asked about, are they collecting this on ad valorem? The language in 192.091 says that the Board of County Commissioners pays the commission on ad valorem collections for the school boards. There isn't similar language about this. The anomaly here is that we're talking about a voted voluntary millage. And that's why there's this unclarity, I can't say that in a better
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
It's not clear to me, because this particular statute is talking about collections for special taxing districts like mosquito control or community,
Yeah.
you mentioned CDDs, community development districts. Entities that tax but would otherwise not be paying anything toward the cost for collection. And so it makes sense to me that for those districts that don't
Sure.
otherwise pay, you would have a commission. But this language that is, it's literally, when you look at the statute, you'll see it's hanging out there. It's not even its own separate paragraph. It just says, as to ad valorem taxes, the county board of commissioners pays the tax collectors commission. So, but it doesn't
But is
speak
that our
to-
regular, that's our regular 0.7,
Right.
right?
You're-
So it's
the
not
norm-
the extra
you're-
one, right?
Correct. So but there is no language in there that says specifically you can or you can't collect a commission on voted voluntary
Gotcha.
millage, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of where this lack of clarity comes from, in my opinion.
And then that's why when I said the ad valorem, like I was going off the page that came from the budget that says changes based upon ad valorem 1.389426 is where I added that one that ad valorem. Yes, Mr. Chapman.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Penley, can you, or Mr. Dye, just educate us for a minute about what the school board is? What are we? Are we a political subdivision, a government entity? What are we, and what powers do we have? Well, really, what powers does the board have, and why that? Because a lot of people get us confused, right? A lot of people think we're part of the county or we're, an HOA type situation. What are we, and what powers does this board have?
So pursuant to Article 4, Section 2 of the Florida Constitution, school boards are separate political subdivisions of the state of Florida. Each district is a county. So when we talk about the school district of Manatee County, you're talking about the geographical confines of Manatee County. When you say the school board of Manatee County, Florida, you're talking about you as a collective board as being the governing body for a separate political subdivision of the state of Florida, that is the school board of Manatee County, Florida.
And and the school board has the right to tax, right?
Absolutely.
And that's in the Florida Constitution.
It's constitutional.
Thank you, Mr. Penley. Sorry, Mr. Kennedy. Thank you for the colloquy there.
Are you good, Mr. Kennedy?
Yeah, I just,
I should look at
one more thing.
Yeah.
Mr. Penley, I just want to make sure I'm in the right spot. 192.091, sub 2, it says, quote, actual costs of collections not to exceed 2% on the amount of special assessments collected and remitted. Is that the right line?
That's the right area.
Right, yeah, that's right there. Yeah.
That's the one
Just want to make sure I
they're
was in the right
leaning
spot.
on.
Right. And the question is,
So
Mr. Kennedy,
special
over.
the question,
Special assessment.
like,
Right.
because it's a 1 mil, it's special.
Special taxing districts is
So
what that generally applies to. Like I said, your mosquito control, if you have a fire district, something like that, that's part of the county, but isn't part of the Board of County Commissioners control, you have a separate board for that. They wouldn't otherwise pay for collection of the taxes that goes to the Lakewood Ranch.
Right.
you know,
No,
fire
yeah, that makes
district.
sense. That
See?
does make sense to me.
So I have questions about this. I'll just say that.
Right, fair enough. Okay, so we're all in the same boat right now.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll let it go. it's very
Ms.
troubling.
Felton?
Just a couple things that I'm a little confused about. As a government entity, the ability of a government entity to earn a commission sounds just, it's not like, they're Apple, out there selling stuff at the Apple store and, hey, I sold 50 iPhones, I get a commission. I don't get that. That doesn't make any sense to me how a government entity can earn a commission because they didn't do anything. The district staff on their days off, the teachers, the parents, everybody who actually cares about kids went out there and fought for this millage. The tax collector didn't get out there and do anything to get this millage. The fact that he gets to get a commission off of doing nothing is disgusting to me. And yes, I'm very irritated about this. And the fact that this is an elected official, I'd like to remind that public of that. The tax collector is an elected official who is taking the money that all of you out there voted for us to get, and he's taking it when nobody else in the state of Florida does this. so that it can sit there in his coffers and probably collect interest, I'm going to assume, so that gives him more revenue, whereas not sitting in our bank account collecting interest and adding to our teacher salaries, our student programs, anything that, safety, any of those things that this money is earmarked for. I mean, everybody out there should be pissed off because they did not vote for this. And they all absolutely have the right to contact the tax collector's office, speak to their elected official, and tell him that they do not approve of this. It shouldn't just be the 5 of us. So I really want to encourage anybody who's listening to get out there, contact the tax collector, remind him that we voted for him, that he is taking money from children, and that this is not a good thing for our county. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, Jack, can I just, on that,
Thank you.
on that point? man?
Quick, yeah.
Yeah, no, real quick. Heather, I feel your anger.
Gray's on board.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just real quick.
Go ahead.
I would have much less of a problem with this. I share your anger, Heather. I would have much less of a problem with this if everyone were paying it. But since it appears
Exactly.
it's only us that have been singled out for this, it's really, really aggravating.
Exactly.
But hopefully we'll find a solution.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
So Brian and
about
Ms.
that.
Trainer?
Okay, I pulled up the 192.091, and in the first 1A, the second line actually says the property appraisers, yada, yada, with several tax authorities of each county, except municipalities and district school boards, shall be billed by the property appraiser for services rendered, except. That's the key word in that line, except. And then, this is so contradictive, this whole statute is. And then it goes down to the last line, next last line, all municipal and school district taxes shall be considered as taxes levied by the county for the purpose for this computation, I think it says. But this is very crafty.
The word I was looking for, Mr. Chair, if I may, is ambiguity. So
Yeah.
Right.
I think this is ambiguous.
Yeah, and to the point Ms. Felton has made, and I'm guessing the rest of all of us agree, is this was just thrown at us all at once. It wasn't a forewarning. We just all of a sudden saw that they were pulling money out. Am I correct?
Right.
And then you inquired about that, and they responded, oh yeah, under this statute, we're allowed to charge you a commission. You're taxing the tax, basically. And I think it's utterly ridiculous in my word, but yeah, 2%, up to 2%. Not to exceed, actually, is what it says, 2% of special assessment collected and remitted. But again, if you go up to number 1, except municipalities and district school boards. So it's very crafty in how they do that. It's almost a loophole into how they can do this. And to me, I think it's absurd, and I think we all should, I don't think we should have to pay it. I think we need to actually talk to the county commissioners too and find out, do you know this is going on? Do you know that's what they're doing to us? So maybe that might be another step too. Because if they're supporting the tax collector's office, like you said, it's going through the county commission is funding the tax collector, right?
Yeah, the county funds the tax.
Right, the county funds it. Does the county know that they're doing this to us? I'd be curious to know.
The chair does, for sure.
The
We had
chair
a
knows.
conversation.
Okay.
And the only explanation I ever get back from anyone is statutorily he's allowed to do it. There's no for XYZ reason or anything. So I don't really know.
Okay,
They don't really know.
I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So.
And I'll
I would
say I
urge
think
our legal team.
I think
to
some of the commission stuff
work
on
on
it,
this.
like the reason why there is that is because I get it. Like if there's an entity that's asking for an extra assessment, like a CDD, that has never been there. We build this community, and we're like, hey, we want to assess the community people that live here for roads, whatever. And you're adding an extra layer to what the tax collector already has to do. I get charging that. That's what this commission is. It's a charge back to that entity. So I completely understand that, right? Like that's normal to me. And so I guess maybe if that's the justification with this extra $1 million that we were asking for, it's something extra. Again, it hasn't been done. We've had this wasn't the first year we had the millage. Like this since 2018, we haven't seen it. So that to me is the question marks. I get allowing the tax collector to charge entities that aren't government entities that can't tax, that are asking for something extra. I get that. So we're just gonna have to find out why we're getting this commission. Mr. Chair?
Singled out.
Yeah, two less thoughts. Number one, Ms. Felton, I concur with the whole commission thing between government entities, but we do take a 5% commission from the charter schools, for instance. So it's legal versus is it right? But I mean, the precedent does exist. The second thing, though, is I'd like to talk to them, obviously, too, and we can't do it together, but we can all go over there individually. But if not, I would be in favor of, pursuing it legally, like, at least looking into it and doing the research and seeing if we have some legal case here that doesn't equate to $1.563 million to fight. But I don't know what the rest of us think about it, but just to have that in our arsenal if we need it. Any thoughts on that, Ms. Penley?
If I may, Mr. Chair, there is one other case I'm aware of in my research where a city sued a tax collector over this, so there is precedent that it has been resolved through litigation if it should come to this term.
And what was the resolution?
The city won.
City won.
Oh, because the language that Ms. Spray cited about it doesn't apply to municipalities, and they determined that it was a municipality, and so they were given back the commission charges in that case. So it has been done before. Hopefully we can resolve something short of that. But there are, for $1.5 million, there are a lot of contingency lawyers out there that would be interested in taking your case.
Yeah.
Well, and to that, Ms. Sellers, I know we did have an inquiry up to the CFO.
Well, I was going to speak to Mr. Tatum's comment about the administration fee, the 5% that we take out that goes from the charter schools before we give them their share. The district actually gives a service for that.
Right.
We're a part of the flow through where we send the FEFP and the other funds that the capital outlay millage money that goes. So we actually do those pieces. There's the charter school a team that works with them, like Miss Hire and stuff. So there's a service that the district
Is providing.
when that 5% is held out for that versus this instance where except for the distribution.
We don't take the admin fee on referendum to the charter schools. There's many funds that we don't take the admin fee on, but referendum's one of them.
But the tax collector does provide a service, so I mean, they collect taxes, and I mean, I can understand they have administrative costs. They provide a service too, right? I mean, they do collect taxes, so that's a good point. We don't take it off
We're not taking it off
the ad valorem. Okay.
Yeah, as Ms. Miley pointed out.
Okay, great.
Okay.
That's all I had.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you guys like to remove?
Yeah, nobody else. Nobody else.
We got hijacked here.
We can move on to the rest of it.
Okay,
horse is fully beaten.
So another point,
Yeah.
so moving on to what we have, our available voted millage revenue to work with. Now, before we start looking at what the district will use for those funds, this is where we do take the proportionate share out to provide to the charter schools. So you can see where it from last year's projected revenue to this year's, it's an increase of about $750,000. Obviously, the impact from the tax collector did make that much less overall for what we're looking at as far as the bottom line, what's available to the district. So when we are developing our budget as to what those uses will be of the referendum, it's this 60.5 million is going to be our starting point when we look to apply them to the different Okay.
And Mr. Chair and Board, this may be something new, but we wanted to put some title or some reason for this budget. This is the millage discussion, but then later we'll talk about the general fund budget. But, similar to what we do as a country, we thought as a district we should have a reason why we're putting money to where we're putting it and what our priorities are. And, our Ready 2026 strategic plan ends in June of 26. So this is kind of the final budget that's linked to that strategic plan. So hence, this Ready 2026 budget and a tradition of excellence is in our seal of the school district. And really, these three areas are areas that, are usually our key three priorities: literacy, safety, and student achievement. So we decided to kind of name this budget and have a title to it. So that's this page. But I think now we go to a tag team of Ms. Sellers and Mr. Jensen as we kind of lay out for you, really the first time in many, many years, how we're proposing we take the millage funding less what we do to help our instructional and our other employees with the millage. If you put that aside, what's left are these 5 buckets, and that's what we'd like to explore with you really for the first time, is really talk to you about what we're proposing and where we think this key funding, millage funding, should go to, where we can really tackle literacy, safety, and student achievement.
I'll jump in and just say real quick, and you said this multiple times for the first time, and so I want to make sure that everybody remembers when we, for the last referendum that was passed, in prior times we just had a blanketed X amount of percentage in pies and things like that, and so in our language in the new referendum, this allows us to have staff be able to every year, with everybody else that's involved in all these things that we added, obviously early learning, we added safety, and we added athletics in the last referendum as well, to be able to go back and look to see where do we need to move from. And these are always going to ebb and flow, right? Like this, the money going to these areas, in my opinion, is probably going to always ebb and flow, because sometimes you don't need as much equipment as the first year, and moving on to the third year, et cetera. And so I appreciate the staff. I know this is obviously the millage is needed, but this is an extra on top of the normal budget. This is an extra item, right, on top of the budget. So I do want to thank the staff for the work they've done. And I think, is it you, Mr. Jensen, first?
Actually, I wanted to point out a typo on our slide. For 25-26, there's a little footnote in the lower left-hand corner that basically says a 11.5 million figure. That figure actually should be 11,721,705.
It's actually correct on the,
It's actually
it's correct on the
on-
handout, but not on the slide.
Yeah, but that's the public
Correct.
image.
We caught
the
that a
public
little
value.
late to be able to figure that out, and that's basically the sum of early learning, STEM, student safety, arts, and athletics that we were using, to be able to build this budget to bring to you today.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, Churchill board members.
Good morning.
Superintendent Chapman. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning talking about something that's really exciting to me, which is a lot of the amazing opportunities we're able to create for students and teachers as a result of this voted referendum. And so this slide is just kind of a high-level overview of those, really the 5 big discretionary components of the voted mill. And in our budgeting process for 25-26, what we've looked at is kind of the rough allocation for each. And as you said, Chair Choate, that can kind of ebb and flow based on, changes throughout the year within the budget, as well as kind of year-to-year changes and needs. So before the following slides are really going to be us just kind of walking through each bucket talking about kind of some of the planned activities and our goals for those activities. And we really arrived at this because, as you know, there's a lot of different people from the business side of the house to all the different components of the instructional division, everything from classroom teachers to school administrators to the different departments within the district that really feed into all of these different buckets. And so stakeholder engagement was a really big component of kind of getting to what activities we think will give us the biggest bang for our buck and the highest ROI, and continue the good work that we've been doing for years with this money. So we've been, working with different stakeholder groups, engaging them on things that are going well, needs that they have, and what we can allocate this money towards that would really support the objectives of the district. And that's what we'll get into in the next few slides. Right.
I do have a question on that. Sorry, I hate to be the one, but.
Of course.
Okay, with every one of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different buckets, you have payroll attached, right?
I believe.
There's no payroll in all of this, anything.
No,
None of this has-
there's positions allocated within these buckets. Yes, if that's what you're asking.
Right, there's positions, but, I mean, the first slide says you have 60 million.
Right, you're
Oh.
talking about the supplements and.
Right, that's what I'm saying. The supplements are not tied into any of these numbers. I just want to make that clear for people.
Correct. This is basically the discretionary part of the referendum after kind of the extended time, salary supplements, all that. Those other pieces of the voted referendum are taken out, and this is just what kind of the
What is
discretionary
left.
spend in these categories is
Right.
left.
Right, but, okay, that's fine. My question would be, I think the STEM is heavy. This is just me. I think the STEM is a little heavy and early learning should be bumped. Because that's where, I know that's been my goal all along, is the early learning. And I think we're good on STEM, to be honest with you. We're breaking all kinds of records and winning all kinds of awards. But that would be my feedback right off the bat, is I think the early learning should have we should have more focus on the early learning bucket than the STEM.
And I appreciate you calling attention to that, because one thing I'd like to point out for the public is, these are kind of 5 general buckets we have, but it doesn't necessarily mean that each bucket is necessarily equal in scope or size. STEM is probably the biggest catch-all bucket, and that includes our career programming within that. STEM, I mean, a lot of what's even allocated within that, I think I could argue for some early learning implications. So as we kind of talk through the activities for each, I'm hoping it adds a little bit of clarity on that, but that's definitely something we can bring back to the team. But I'm excited to share how early learning and what we're looking at for it can, I think, really take what we're doing as a district to the next level, because I agree with you. Early learning is my highest priority, and I know it's yours.
Well, I think that point, you could have some early learning functioning within inside of STEM.
Correct.
So where do you
Right.
put at each one? You know what I mean? I don't know how much we have doing that. I have no clue. But you could have it in both. So where do you put it? You know what I mean? If we're doing something that could be STEM or could be early learning, you could dump it into either one.
The problem with a presentation like this is it compartmentalizes a lot
Sure.
of things
Right.
that really have kind of blurry lines between them sometimes.
Just like when we do transfers all the time in budgets. and
Right,
things
it
like
just
that.
crosses over. I understand that.
Ms. Felton?
Right.
Then Mr. Kenny?
I just wanted to point out too, with early learning, if we're looking at, the littles, the little littles,
The little
littles,
yeah.
and then up through pre-K, okay, and maybe even into K. I'm not quite sure how.
all the way through 3rd grade.
All the way through 3rd grade. Okay, so that those kiddos, and then but STEM goes from pre-K all the way to MTC, and so if you're
Right.
looking at it in terms of that, that's every person that we educate, whereas early learning is getting almost half of the same budget as STEM, and that's just for the pre-K through 3rd. So they are getting percentage-wise per child a considerably larger amount than if we spread it out per child from pre-K all the way through MTC.
Right.
And we'll talk about it on the STEM slide a little bit.
Okay.
It is, less money in that bucket than we traditionally would have just because of the many different things that have been added. But also, like you said, a lot of the large upfront expenses, we've done a majority of that buying up till now. So like our robotics fields and sets
Right.
and, a lot of those things that are maybe high dollar amount items, they've been purchased and need refreshing periodically, but it's not like a large upfront purchase like we've had to do in years past. So I think some of the changes in this budget are a result of, like Chair Choate said, what programs kind of have need for those upfront purchases. Now kind of doing that program by program evaluation and working with those stakeholders to identify our areas of need and allocating money appropriately.
Okay.
Oh, Mr. Kennedy had a question.
I do, just real quick, only because Heather and I weren't here for this most recent renewal. We're still at 51% goes to the MEA group, or the teachers, and then 6% goes to paras? Is that still?
No, in the statute,
No.
it is, we have to match what they receive for 24-25 for teachers, the supplement.
Okay,
So that could be 53%, that could be 48%, but we have to stay there. So that's the minimum we can possibly get or give them. We can't give them any less than that.
oh, interesting, I didn't know.
So when we discussed it from last referendum, we went away from having to give the 51 because of concern of that 51 potentially could blimp to where they're making more than APs. Who would want to go into leadership? But also gives us a flexibility to, we can add whatever we want to make sure that we are competitive around. So when you go back and look at the language that's there, it says for us to always be competitive with the surrounding districts. And we have to keep it in 24-25's supplement. That's the lowest they can possibly go.
Gotcha, okay.
You're right, I've got the language
You want to
here.
clarify that language? Yeah.
And it actually read, and it was on page 2 of that ballot and in one of the whereas sections, and it said, the millage retention amount will be set at the fiscal year 2024-25 baseline amount and adjusted annually by the school board to keep salaries competitive.
Right.
So it gives us the flexibility to say, maybe we want it more than 51%. So maybe we look at this and say, this is great, but we want teacher salary to be 60% of it. It allows us to do that.
Okay, but you said that we can't lower it
Past the 24-25.
24-25. So 24-25 is our baseline. It must always be as long as it's in effect.
Correct. For these 4 years, yeah.
Right.
And I guess
Until
we
the
can
next
change
one, yeah.
the resolution to whatever we want the next, like we did the last time. Mr. Kennedy, did you want to jump, Mr. Chapman, did you want to jump in?
Mr. Chair and the board, we are going to dive deeper into this in a shade meeting coming up in July, so that we can kind of talk about this and work through that a little bit. Really, the goal today was to kind of dive deep into these 5 areas that, like the board chair said, you all as a board, this board hasn't ever really dived into. So it was really for us as a staff to get your take on where we're putting these funds and the amounts and priorities, and just get direction from you as we finalize this budget. And then we'll kind of dive deeper on those issues at a shade come later here in July.
Okay, that makes sense, thank you.
That answers my question.
Mr. Kennedy, that was last one. Okay,
Yep,
we're
that's
good.
me.
Perfect. Then we'll move to the next slide, which is early learning, which is a new activity to this millage budget. You can see our goals up top, and I put a star on my piece of paper by raising 3rd grade reading achievement. I think that's one of the most measurable outcomes we have to identify the impact. So for a few years now, we've really been investing heavily in early learning, building a kind of pre-K through grade 2 infrastructure. And I think, that's a long-term investment the board makes in work, right? Because you don't immediately see the dividends of that work show up in the school accountability formula. But I think we're getting to the point now where in future years, we will see the yield and the return on investment of that work. And I think the activities that we're proposing here and really highlighting here are designed to take that work to the next level and continue and build upon that investment in early learning. I included on the bottom right of the slide just data from the state, which just is small, but it shows the effect of something as simple as attending pre-K on a student's achievement on that third grade exam. So you see that top bar is students who attended and completed VPK. They're 60.4% proficient on that grade 3 exam. However, when they attend but did not complete VPK, that falls into the low 40s. And for students who are not in VPK, that's in the mid 30s. And so there's substantial differences in early learning outcomes just from a program like VPK. And so I think the more we can do to support our early learners through a number of different programs, the better long-term outcomes we're going to see as a school district. And so some of the key activities we're really focusing on. First, I would say every one of these different budget categories, from literacy to safety to STEM, has one or two really key linchpin big ticket items in it. And I think one of the biggest ticket items is that first bullet point for early learning. This will be the first time I'm aware of as a school district we'll have a literacy coach dedicated to early learning literacy at every elementary school and KA site. I truly believe that's going to be a game changer for us. We're going to be able to work with those coaches, compartmentalize their work, so we have someone at the school level completely focused on those literacy outcomes, who's working with the other literacy coaches in the district to build their collective capacity, understanding, and then bringing it to their teachers at the school in grades pre-K through 3 to really increase our achievement on that third grade reading exam. And so I'm very excited about this investment, and I think it really has the opportunity to make a huge difference, especially when we look at other counties who've experienced strong gains in early learning and literacy and third grade reading, and the kind of coaching infrastructure and instructional support infrastructure those districts have. I think this brings us in line with what we see highly successful districts do.
That's great.
And then, of course, we have activities like staffing and materials for our Soren 4 lab, which I know you're all very excited about. I'm excited about, too. That's the lab that's opening at the Harley Center. I believe furniture is going in today.
Nice.
So work continues, and we're progressing there. Increasing the number of foundational skills, instructional resources, professional learning opportunities for our pre-K through 2 classrooms. Continuing to partner with small group intervention and tutoring resources like Chapter 1 in those classrooms, again, pulling students and doing small group interventions with them or one-on-one interventions, dual language early learning initiatives. And you'll see this on a number of the slides. This says district literacy champions, but on other slides you'll see kind of a champion. These are either positions that are built into the referendum or budgeted through other means, or positions identified in the school district that really serve as kind of an advocate for those particular groups, and again, key stakeholders for those groups, so we can continually reflect on the efficacy of our activities, and those stakeholders can be a voice for the impact these initiatives are having in our school district and our community. Just continuing to engage people within the organization to make sure we're hitting the mark on these activities, and that we're telling people about the positive impact of them.
I have a question there.
Yep, Mr. Tatum.
Good morning, Mr. Jensen.
Good morning.
This might be a little bit of a difficult question or conversation, in the sense that I was looking ahead to the meeting tonight, and I was looking at the reading scores, for third grade. Maybe not what we'd like, right? Maybe.
I agree.
Yeah. So I know that when we go through the agendas, there are a lot of items on there, big ticket items for millions of dollars for programs that directly affect this kind of thing, right? And I don't know how to teach kids how to read. So I have to trust you and your staff to know what we need and do what we need to do, and I know you're all hardworking, and I know that you're doing the best that you can, and you're professionals, and you're very well educated. So I don't want to take anything away from your efforts. But when I see the lack of progress, at least this year, I think to myself, the millions and they're literally like millions and millions of dollars that we're spending. What do you? It's kind of an open-ended question, but I mean, are you thinking about that too? Like, we're spending these millions and millions of dollars on these, whatever, iReady and all these different things, and it's really not moving us where we want to go. Do we need to be spending these millions of dollars? Should we put more pairs in the classroom? Should we do more I don't know. I mean, I'm just curious if you're thinking anything. Like I said, that's what I'm thinking, but then, again, I'm not an expert at this. But go ahead.
I mean, I agree with you. So, I mean, we're still seeing, the raw data, we're not growing as fast as I want us to grow.
Mm-hmm.
The achievement isn't as high in third grade as I would like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's still, I believe, going to end up being highest or close to highest in our district's history for that category. But it's we're not growing at the pace of other districts that I'm kind of benchmarking us to, and I think that conversation, I mean, to reassure you, we're always having a conversation on the instructional side of the house. So when we're adding activities like that literacy coach initiative, right? That's a big ticket change to address that need we see in third grade. Like third grade is going to be a significant focus of this summer's training, both with school administrators, with our new literacy coaches, and with teachers during their summer training and ongoing training throughout the year as well. So that's just going to be a priority of the district, and something that, again, I hope some moves we can make will continue our growth in that area and accelerate our growth in that area. But yes, I mean, we're constantly having the conversations of like, okay, what is the ROI on this program? What is the ROI on this initiative? But I think the more we can do the more pieces we can put in place to support the impact of our teachers in their classrooms, the better our results will be. I don't think any program can replace a highly skilled, highly qualified teacher in the classroom, and I think something like a literacy coach initiative at our schools is fundamentally designed to support teacher efficacy and growth in the classroom and those outcomes. These are also people who can work individually with students to support their growth as well. So we're optimistic about this and some related initiatives, but I agree. I think there's lots in kind of previewing the data for tonight, and we'll actually preview some more on the science slide. Previewing the data for tonight, that's probably the one data point that I'm most frustrated by, let's say, because I think there's other grade bands where we saw much more positive growth, and I think there's some lessons learned from that and something we're reflecting on. But this activity in particular, being supported by some of that referendum funding and community support, I think can really help accelerate our efforts in those dimensions.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yeah, real quick, Mr. Tatum, as long as you brought this up, I just want to get on my soapbox for a second on this, because it's the $1 million question of education. How do we drive, especially third grade reading? Mm-hmm. As we already saw on the early learning, I'm glad you included that bar graph, because it does show very clearly what a powerful effect and what return on investment you do get from pre-K and early learning. And generally speaking, if a student, again, I'm generalizing, but I think this is true, you can back me up. If a kid is a level 3 in third grade, they're most likely going to continue to be a level 3 throughout the rest of their academic career, generally speaking. So, but when we do make comparisons to other districts, which I think it's important that we do, like, let's measure ourselves, apples to apples, oranges to oranges. So let's look at counties who have the same percentage of Title I kids that we have.
Right.
Because we're always getting compared to Sarasota, and that's fine. They're a great district, but they have far fewer Title I kids than we do. And so I just, as long as we're on this topic,
Yeah.
I just always want to remind folks, not you, I know you guys are aware of this, but just if somebody's listening, the public's paying attention to this, that, we do have a lot of kids coming from challenging backgrounds, and that's an impediment to learning, obviously, as we all know well. So, I'm really, this early learning thing is, Derek, you're right. It does take years to kind of see the benefit, but the benefit is so dramatic that, if you can wait those 4 or 5 years to see those little 4-year-olds succeeding in 3rd grade, it's really, really gets you there. But anyway, I'll step off my soapbox, but.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good, and we have a lot of second language learners, and who knows?
That's another one.
Another influx of them coming in, and it's, someone who shows up. What do we get? We get a 2-year grace period or something, Mr. Jensen, before their scores count or something like that. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, but even then.
Proficiency.
So if they show up at the age 6 and never spoke English, and they're not speaking English at home, and then we're magically supposed to be magicians and get them
3 years.
proficient,
Yeah, that's another good example. We have a lot of the ELL kids,
Yeah.
higher percentage than a lot of other.
The other thought I just had, if charter schools or someone wants to open a charter school, I mean, we have all these, not all, but a couple companies coming in, and they're going out and finding high school kids that need a different program to graduate, and one company actually goes out into the community and finds the kids that are actually have dropped out and says, hey, you want to come back and get your degree? It'd be interesting if there was the same idea, but to go out and find children that are not in pre-K, right? And say, hey, did you know that pre-K is available? And we have it, and I know we have it at our schools too, and I don't know if it's full. The point is getting that same effort, to, finding these high school kids that are out there, finding these pre-K kids. Hey, it's available.
Let's go find the 3 and 4-year-olds out there.
Yeah, let's go find the 3 and 4-year-olds
That's
instead of the
concept,
16 and
yeah.
17-year-olds,
No, absolutely.
and get them into, either they do it in their own charter school or some program where we get them into our own schools, with the
I know
capacity that
that's
we
what-
have, so.
I know that's what Dr. Halpin, when the SORN 4 happens,
Right.
and now the lab, they're absolutely trying to get them permanently into VPK, right? But yeah, I mean, sometimes it doesn't happen. But I agree with you. I think that's a great concept. Like, knock on doors, and I'm not saying we have the staff to do that, but to go have somebody do that, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, or, an ad when I say ad, I mean, just some type of campaign through employers in the county. Or,
Sure.
Hey, this is available. Did you know that you can, I don't know what's out. If we could increase it by 10 or 12%, the number of kids in our, Tropicana, for instance. Hey, are you aware that work at Tropicana that these VPK programs are available to your kids, and getting the word out through the employers at Chamber of Commerce. Maybe they're doing that. Dr. Halpin's probably sitting there going somewhere, Mr. Tatum, we're doing all that.
Yeah.
But
And we just don't happen to work there or have.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody has little kids on this board. I will say this though, to your point, Mr. Kennedy, about the long play in early learning, right? And so when I came on the board in 21, you all had already started, like several years before that, this initiative of really pushing early learning, and the help through some philanthropic groups, getting SOAR and 4 ready and all that kind of stuff. And I think we have seen the progression. But I think, as Mr. Jensen, as you say, like, maybe it's not happening as fast as we want. And we can also, sometimes, you get to like a little bit of a plateau or stall, whatever, and you just got to like inject it a little bit more. And I think the literacy coaches on the campuses, something I spoke about, I know in briefings for several years, is that. And so I think that maybe just pushes us over the edge again. But I do agree with you. It is a long play. Investing in early learning is, you got to wait 5, 6, 7 years to see those scores. And I think we've done that. And that's kudos to the board, several boards prior to us, and you were on those, to put some more initiatives inside of early learning. And you all saw these numbers, several years back. And so, I'm excited to see what the new stuff we're doing. And I may not be on the board to see that, right? Like, it may be 5, 6 years from now, but I'm excited.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, to this team's credit, to the board's credit, this investment, I think, goes farther than anything a previous board suggested, because we did have, the Ross camps really with Seabreeze Elementary kind of launched the SOAR 4, which I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe was really the first targeted focus on pre-K. Whereas the previous efforts, and not that they weren't appreciated, but it was more nonprofit partners coming into, especially like the urban corridor Title I schools, where we had already missed that 3, 4, 5-year-old window. They were already into elementary school, so that's why I really appreciate this effort, the reading coaches, the board's commitment to early learning. So I think not this board, but the previous board that put this plan in place really deserves a lot of credit too, because this is a dramatic investment, which we'll see in a few years, 2029, 2030. We're going to see some rock star third grade numbers.
Right.
I'm optimistic that we can do things immediately to support.
Agree. I
incremental
absolutely do think some of this will be
and
immediate.
long-term build capacity to continue to see growth over time.
No, I do think some of this will be immediate. Ms. Spray?
Okay. To Mr. Tatum's point, I'm not a reading teacher. You said teach Sunday school, and part of that was reading. Reading is games. It's learning words through games and books and visuals and all of that, and spelling the word cat, C-A-T, and dog, D-O-G. It's all kind of different learning games to learn to read. As far as the coaches, literacy coaches, that was the number one thing I asked for when I got on this seat. I want to see, because I toured the school and I was being introduced to all of these high school literacy coaches, and I wasn't introduced to any of them at elementary or middles. Maybe a few would come in every so often. So this is huge for me. And the third grade reading scores are a little dismal to me, because I'm like, what happened here? But we didn't have literacy coaches in every elementary. So I think that's going to be a game changer. But my goal from when I got here to when I leave was the ROI is going to be what the third graders level of reading will be at 8th grade, 10th grade, 12th grade at graduation. It starts down here at 3rd grade, but I want to see where they are at 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, because that's the goal. You got to get, like Mr. Kennedy said, if they're going to be at level 3 at 3rd grade, that's probably what they're going to be all the way through their school. And I even said, I'd be happy if we had, a higher number at level 3. I just don't like the 1s and 2s at all. So I think when we talk about ROI, it's just not 3rd grade reading levels. It's just not that. It's the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, because that should shoot them on a trajectory to where all of those numbers would go up. So I don't want everyone to just focus on 3rd grade, because you're going to have new 3rd graders every year. But you're going to have consistent 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. So reading is playing games to me. That's how you start it with VPK. How I taught my kids when they were little is playing the games and reading the books, the little cardboard books is what I called them, because that's what they were like. So I'm excited about getting this. I just wish we'd have done it last year. So that would have been here, and that was something that I had talked to you about, I think, as a goal when you first got here. That's my goal. Get them reading scores up. Get them up, because I think eventually we're going to have that ROI.
Absolutely,
So,
thank you.
But yeah.
We're good?
That's all.
Okay. So moving on to our next bucket. This is not a new category. This is the STEM category. And many of you are familiar with the activities that happen in the STEM category, because it is probably one of our more visible ones, with the different competitions and things you see in our schools and our students participating in. And it encapsulates science, technology, career programming, additional time for students after school for tutoring and supplemental academic programming. And before we kind of get into the budget activities, which are kind of building on what we would currently do as a school district and are a modified version of what we currently do, that this is another preview of tonight's data. In the bottom right of this slide, you'll see we test students in 3 grade levels or in 3 areas for science achievement at the state level, 5th grade, 8th grade, and then in biology. And you can see that as a district, we improved 4% in the aggregate across all of those grade levels, which is a pretty substantial jump from one year to another year in any accountability category. And the projected 60% district grade would be the highest in SDMC's history. And science is very important to me. I was a high school science teacher, and it's definitely a love of mine. And seeing, I think, this investment in our students continue to pay off, and I expect to see even more growth year over year to where we're eventually one of the highest performing districts in the state in science, because I think we have that potential. I think all of the investment that's been done up to this point and the engagement of our students in high quality science curriculum, but also in all of the supplemental activities like robotics and STEM competitions and TSA and all of the amazing programs our students and families have access to has really helped reinforce a commitment to and a love for STEM that I think translates into that high quality achievement and is something that our teachers can really plug into to support the core science instruction that happens in our classrooms every day. So typically, we have some school-based allocations that support that curriculum, supplies for our STEM labs, for instance, as well as after-school activities and extended learning time. We have our one of the largest activities is both that extended learning time as well as our STEM teachers at elementary schools. So a number of our elementary STEM teachers are paid for out of this pot of money. And then obviously you see our students thrive in our events and competitions, both within the school district, things like our STEM showcase, science fair, CT competitions, as well as at our state and national competitions. And then we have initiatives like WASED, VEX, Gardner Holt Animatronics, Roots Robotics, and of course, a number of people that'll serve as district STEM champions who continue to do that work. For example, Lynn Johnston, who's one of our who's our STEM coordinator and really kind of drives a lot of this programming at the district level. And you see her essentially every STEM event now.
Ms. Sam, do you have a question or no? That was
No,
the
I
last time.
pulled it down, yep. Sorry, I'll take it down.
Okay.
We're good.
All right, moving on to the next slide. This one is a new activity. This is student safety, so that was added to the ballot language for this year. And again, really the goal is to make our schools the safest in the state and in the nation. And I think, again, board members, there was a lot of discussion leading into this referendum vote about, what the impact of passing the millage would be on school safety. And this year Ms. Scarborough led a very successful implementation of our evolved security screening at our high school campuses, so that all of our high school campuses, students and visitors were walking through that system every day. And we've heard significant amounts of feedback about how our students, our families, our teachers, and our administrators feel much safer on those campuses knowing that those screening measures are in place. And this category and part of the referendum allows us to expand that initiative now to middle schools, which is by far the largest component of that budget allocation for safety, is really that expansion of the evolved weapon detection system to all of our middle school campuses. And then, of course, a little additional programming for, summer school security and program support for the guardians, who we have to increase the number of guardians in order to do that middle school implementation of Evolve. But that's the primary activity that's going on in the security bucket in the referendum.
Find my button.
Yeah. Yep.
I just want to point out, and I probably have a bit longer of institutional memory on this one because I've I've been here in the county for longer. But some of you who have been here a long time will remember that in 1997, we had a shooting at Lincoln Middle School in which a 13-year-old brought a gun to school and hit the other child who had been bullying him. So some of you are looking at me like, oh, really? No, but that was in 97. And so, yeah, and the child, of course, was arrested and everything. But and then in 2019, we also had a student arrested at Lincoln with a gun. So the fact that we are and other middle school kids across the county have brought things as well. So the fact that we are now having this at the middle school level is very important to me. Being in a middle school classroom for 3 years and having a gun in my own classroom, found in my own classroom as a middle school teacher, I know what that's like. And I know how terrifying that is to know that you had a loaded gun in your classroom. And so the fact that we are making our middle schools that much safer, and having been, through the fear of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next in my classroom, I really appreciate that the previous board voted to add this and that we agreed to continue this and add it to the middle schools, because everybody thinks of the high schools, kids bringing things to high schools, but it happens in middle schools all the time across the country every day, and several times in Manatee County. So I just want to just put that out there, because that was one of the first things when I was running that people asked me about, when are they going to put the things at the middle schools permanently. So I'm just want to reiterate how glad I am that we have that available.
Moving on to the next slide. This is an existing activity that you're all familiar with, which is our arts component to the referendum. And again, really the goal is just to continue to build on the great work that was done in the prior years with this money, ensuring our students have access to world-class visual and performing arts opportunities, and increasing our student enrollment in those. So the primary budget activity in this is those school-based allocations to support arts program quality that are kind of managed and overseen by the district. So, supporting the program infrastructure across campuses, making sure that students have access to the instruments and all the different tools and supplies they need in order to engage in the arts, and our teachers feel like they have what they need in order to run high-quality arts programs. Support for our events and competitions, including our all-county arts events, staffing for high-need programs, professional learning for our arts educators, which we support every year, and again, our staff members who will serve as district art champions representing this area. As you know, arts is essential to creating well-rounded students in our community, and just like athletics, which we'll talk about here on the next slide, students who participate in arts research shows tend to have higher attendance, tend to have higher academic outcomes than students who don't participate in the arts. And so I think continuing our investment in this category, and obviously, it's about a strategic allocation of resources. So how do we, again, get that maximum ROI? We've done so much wonderful investment in these programs over the last few years, where we've kind of done those large upfront purchases of materials and tools, whether it's like a kiln or instruments or tuba, right? Kiln or a tuba. We've done a lot of that upfront purchasing, and so for some of those large purchases, now we're in a maintenance and replenishment phase, and it's about continuing to build on program quality with this allocation that we're moving forward with. Okay. And then finally, the fifth bucket on the next slide is new to the instructional referendum, and that's supporting our athletics programs. And like I just said, just like arts, when we see students participate in athletic programs, we see stronger academic outcomes. We see stronger attendance at school, which is a huge facet of raising student achievement in our district. If we can get attendance and engagement up, we will see outcomes increase. And so really it's about increasing the quality of our existing programs, expanding sports and program offerings, and making sure that it's a level playing field for all of our schools and students to be able to access the athletic opportunities that they want to engage in. Ms. Scarborough worked very closely with our athletic directors in kind of conceptualizing what the facets of an athletic millage would look like. And a big piece of it is, athletics, like arts, can often have a high barrier to entry. Starting a new program can have large upfront costs or be financially difficult to manage for a school, particularly when you kind of look at the number of tickets sold for an athletic event versus like the revenue you take in versus the program cost to operate it, have referees, engage in that. So I think we can really level the playing field and allow schools to increase their program offerings by kind of in a similar way we do for arts, create school-based allocations that support those equipment, training supplies, officials, facilities, uniforms, safety, security apparatuses, and then also special projects that'll kind of improve our athletics offerings as a district. So that's kind of what we're looking at.
A couple board members lit up to speak about this one. Ms. Spray, then Mr. Kennedy.
Okay. Sports. Some of our sports programs are not revenue generators.
Correct.
Like football, you buy a ticket to go to the game. I don't know about any other sport that does that, but some of them are not. And I'm giving you a perfect example. Tennis is my thing. We all know that. The coaches were buying their own tennis balls by the end of the season. And that was so bizarre to me. I said, why are you not we were only allowed or allocated so much money and we've spent it already. I know when I coached, I never had to ask for funding to buy the balls or get donations from tennis players to donate their old racket to students that didn't have one. I always had resources. I think we have that too, but for a coach to have to go buy or somebody to donate a box of tennis balls for the end of the season for their district matches I don't know if it was the district or just regular season. I don't know which level it was at, but I just thought that was bizarre that they had to do that. So, so that's one thing for this. But the other thing is, it says uniforms, okay? And I know we have uniforms in our general budget for football, correct?
No, band.
For band, okay, thank you. For band. So
Cycle.
I don't know what.
Yeah, cycled every year. So it goes to a different school.
Right, right.
Okay, it
Yeah,
goes
on
to-
a
There
ro-
still is money designated to buy.
Yeah, a
a band
rotating
uniform.
cycle in the general budget, so,
So it goes from school
Right,
to
it cap-
school.
I don't
or
think
capital.
it's actually capital.
Capital.
in
Capital,
capital.
Especially
In
capital.
capital, and it's like, whatever it is, two
Which is
schools
wild.
every year or something, or one school every year, right, it's a cycle. I knew that.
You did know that. Okay, I forgot it was actually a band. Okay, so is this like baseball uniforms and all of that? I'm just curious of what uniforms is being bought in this.
So yes, and good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. I hope you're nice to see everybody. With athletics in the past, there has been a small budget that's allocated to each school, but in addition, the revenue from ticket sales is what athletic directors would do to then give a budget to each athletic program. And when you are participating in any of the team sports specifically, there are regulated uniforms. When you order them, there's such designations as so much as the size of the number on the front chest and where it's at and all of that, and appropriate vendors, et cetera. And that can be very expensive with what the equipment is because you are limited by who you can order that from. So if they're not a revenue generating sport, then you pull it from another revenue generating sport. So if you fill your football stadium, football usually carries your other revenue generating sports. But if you don't have as many of those, or you don't have a big night, nobody comes, they don't feel like it's a competitive game, so nobody wants to buy a ticket, or they're going to watch it streaming, you may not have as much revenue. So that's usually supplanted or with fundraising that happens between the different sports. When I coached, I did a spirit pack, and my kids would get some things, or I do a fundraiser on a Saturday to raise funds for those additional things that we needed. Basic equipment was there, but if I wanted to get new uniforms, here's how much you've got toward them, but if you want to get a second one, you might need to update that. So by providing these dollars on a regular basis from the referendum, as Mr. Jensen said, it evens the playing field. So basically, this helps give everybody cake, and the extra money is going to give them the icing on the cake from the referendum. So that's the way I look at it. They've had the cake, but now we can put, that so that everybody can have the best helmets that they should, that we're not waiting too long to replace some safety equipment, because it's a highly expensive item that you rotate. Band is in the capital budget, but none of the athletic equipment is in our capital budget. So the sports teams sometimes have to rotate. This is the year that we need new bats. This is the year we need new rackets. This is the year. And so those athletic directors are budgeting and balancing that. So having the referendum dollars, and in meeting with the athletic directors, we discussed what is your highest cost? What do we need to look at? And that's where we looked at where if we provide everybody with this amount to budget out to provide that, then if a team has great revenue at one of their sports, or there's extra from ticket sales, they can then get those extra things for them in addition at their school.
And some schools have like booster programs through like
Correct.
And with alumni, and depending on how involved, or I'm looking at Manatee, they got a really good one, a program where they help support their students, and they're able to bring that in as well, and that also helps take care of some of that.
All right.
Mr. Kennedy? Oh, I'm sorry. Were you done, Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy and then Ms. Turner?
Yeah, Sharon, you started hitting on this, but my question is about come July 1st, how will this pot of money, is it just per school or per student count or per student athletes?
So what our thought was, because our schools all offer basically the same sports, they have the same number of teams for the most part, we would give them their share by each school. So each of the 7 schools would get an allocation, and then the athletic directors would budget through that. We would obviously review that to make sure the purchases they're buying are things that they really need for athletics. We're not, sending everybody to Vegas for a golf tournament. We're actually getting what they need for their sport. So it would be for those things that are there, as we've done with the other items, because we do know there's an oversight to be sure that we're using the taxpayers' money appropriately.
Okay, so but that's an interesting point you just brought up. So it's going to be allocated to the 7 high schools.
Correct, and we've already discussed what items they would need. So for example, the most expensive thing they pay for is officials. Right. So officials, by budgeting out what they spent last year, all of our schools together probably spent $500,000 on officials. Yeah. So out of that 1.6, you could probably tell for everybody to have officials. So if you only have 10 people in the stands for a basketball game, you still need both officials, you're losing money on that game. But this way, we always make sure that the player safety is supported with having our officials paid timely, and we have them at everything. But that is really probably the biggest cost that you have at sports, and it's something, regardless of how many are in the stands or not, you're going to have that bill.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So that's just an example, yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Mr. Chair, and if Ms. Scarborough can just talk about postseason play and how the
Correct.
funds will be used for that, and also our a new weather detection system that is really going to improve not only the safety of everybody watching the sport and participating, but also the staff time and the rescheduling and all of that. So maybe Ms. Scarborough, if you can just talk about the postseason play, and then also our weather system that we're buying or purchasing.
Thank you. So one of the main things we wanted to be sure was in this is we've allocated dollars that any team, regardless of their financial situation, will be able to participate in postseason pay. Sometimes when you win, you're like, oh my goodness, now I have to travel here, and you're going across the state. It's a wonderful thing, but then you've got to figure out how to pay for it. So that would be covered in the referendum for any school who goes into postseason play. Because all of a sudden, if you've got to get all your kids down to Miami for a competition, or they're weightlifting and they're all heading up to Pensacola, you can get them there, and it's not a barrier that parents are having to take that because their child has achieved that postseason play. We would make sure that that is not a barrier. That is included in the budget item that we have in there, that we allocated how much it could potentially be, just like those buckets move. And in terms of safety, there is a weather system that we would be able to install at our schools. The Perry-weather system, and Mr. Choate, I think we've looked at that together in the past. It was financially very expensive, but it will check, and they use it around us. Hillsborough and Sarasota also use it, so I have spoken with those counties about it. It detects for lightning delays, but it also looks at your wet bulb. It's consistent for the safety, if you need to bring people in, regardless of whether they're playing tennis outside or they're in band. If it's unsafe, we need our children in so that they know that it's appropriate, but it also will detect severe weather. So it will be, it has a range that will support our elementary and middle schools. If we have to delay buses or we have to do anything to make any kind of call for weather, it does indicate what is happening in that area. So you can then safely determine, do we need to hold our dismissal? Do we need to speed it up? In addition, if you're traveling with your weightlifters to Pensacola, you have an on-call meteorologist, so you can call and see if you have any kind of weather issues you need to know about before you get on the road and know that you can't make it there, you have to reroute. So that's part of the service of the weather system. And in talking with the athletic directors in the other counties, they've used it for a while, and it's really increased their safety and security for not only their high schools, but all of their schools. So that's a great addition, you know, especially when we have some elementary running clubs. That's one of the things we also want to make sure that we implement with the athletics. That's not individually on there. That's one of the specific special projects we'll be looking at, is expanding it to some of our lower grades as well.
Cool.
I just had an
Mr.
initial.
Tatum?
Oh, go ahead.
Just one comment on Ms. Spray's comment about having to buy tennis balls. I mean, we have a huge fund balance at the end of the year, do we not, Ms. Sellers? I mean, like over 10%, or when we get there, it's going to be pretty high.
With our general fund
Yeah.
reserve, it is a good solid.
Yeah. So it's just, I mean, maybe there could be some process where there's a request that goes up the chain, you know. It's just, I'm just envisioning the tennis coach at the Dick's Sporting Goods, you know, having to buy his own tennis balls when we've got, you know, a 12% fund balance on our operational side. And maybe why don't they know that? Like, hey, just go to your principal and say, hey, send a request up there. And then you all can decide if we can afford it, that $5.99 for tennis balls, you know.
And I would hope that any of our teachers or coaches out there know that they could go either to the athletic directors, their principal, and hopefully get that funding and make sure that we have that, because we want to make sure that they all are able to compete without it impeding them personally. That they do so much outside of that they shouldn't have to do that. And if that has occurred, I would hope that they would let us know so we can make sure that doesn't happen.
Although I'm imagining the answer is something like, sure, go fill out Form 2917 and send it to the athletic director. He'll send it to the principal. The principal will send it up to the finance department. The finance department will look at it, see if we have a contract for tennis balls somewhere, if we need to follow it or not. If we do, then we're going to have to put it through the contracting process. You know, I'm being a little facetious, but maybe they're just going, hey man, it's easier for me to go down to Dick's and pay the $10.99. But it is frustrating, but I don't know. Anyway.
Ms. Scarborough meets routinely with the group of athletic directors so that they can share any barriers or concerns they have with her. And so I would hope that if there is a concern about equipment availability or out-of-pocket purchases, that could be made very expeditiously to the athletic director. And if for some reason they're encountering a barrier, they have a direct line to Ms. Scarborough, and we can resolve that very quickly for them.
Okay, great. That was my only comment. Thank you.
Ms. Ray?
I just wanted to also say that this whole deck is, to Ms. Scarborough's point, saying, oh, the officials are expensive. We've been paying officials before we ever got this millage. So I don't want to mislead the public.
The
that
district hasn't.
The district hasn't?
No, officials were not paid by the school district.
No, ma'am.
Nothing, I mean, I'm not gonna out, you go ahead, but no, the school district never paid for officials, nothing like that, no.
No.
I mean, I wanna say well, go ahead.
So we do give the high schools money every year.
Sure.
They do pay for officials, bus transportation.
Yeah, they can pay anything out of that money
Correct.
that was
Right.
given.
So they.
But we're talking about like $25,000.
Yep, exactly. They've been given less than $25,000 each year to function every athletic
For
program.
athletics.
235,000 across the.
For all seven.
All seven, yeah. I meant per school.
Per school, yeah.
Right.
Okay, so you're saying that the school is given a budget and they use part of that budget to pay an official?
Yes, they use part of that budget and then, but it's not enough. So usually the ticket sales of any athletic event is how they then supplement that. And if they don't have enough from ticket sales, then they may turn to fundraisers or boosters at that point with anything they need in addition.
Okay, so you're saying we're going from fundraising and ticket sales to fund the officials to now the millage is gonna fund the officials?
That's one of the costs in it. So we wanted to be sure that our athletic departments are consistent what they're using it on. So they're using it for things to maintain the safety and what they need for their sports to compete, and not spending it on what the taxpayer could think is a frivolous expense. We want to make sure it's the meat of what they would need for their competition and what they're doing each sport.
Okay. That's all,
That's
thanks.
it?
Yeah.
All right, that was it. Last one to speak. Oh, and then that's the last page.
Excellent. All right, and I think that's the end of our presentation. So any
Other
questions
further
or discussion?
comment? Thank you all very much. Any other further comment for this part? Because I do want to take a break before we get into the general fund. No? Good on the millage? Yep.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, y'all. I appreciate it. Let's go 10-minute break. We'll come back at 11:56 for the general fund. We are on recess. All right, welcome back. After our recess, we're going to move to item number 2, which is the 2026 budget workshop, or the general fund for 25-26. So I'll give it to you, Ms. Sellers.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I guess
No, it's still morning. Good
morning. Whoa, okay, all right. So this is the budget workshop for the fiscal year 25-26 budget. With me today, but I believe she has stepped out, hasn't come back from the break, is our budget director, Gina Moliniak. She assists with the budget. We still have our finance director, Kathy Miley, here in the room as well, too. And so a pretty good effort to make sure we get all of the information in to bring it to you today. All righty. So today we're going to cover the budget process for next fiscal year. We've got some legislative changes that we're going to present to you, also related to the FEFP revenue funding, some assumptions that are made for the general fund, and also we'll take a look at that general fund reserve, that history and present fund policies that also dictate where we try to target. Okay, so there are significant parts to the budget that we bring to you in different phases. The staffing plan was distributed in mid-June to you in the books to let you know what those allocation ratios are. And we also brought to you that capital plan with the May data through that point. So July is busy for us. July 1st is when the district will receive the final property values from the property appraiser. Then on July 19, we're going to receive the required local effort from DOE. We'll use that to create the budget that will bring for advertisement and the tentative 25-26 millage and the budget for the public hearing, which is going to be then at the end of July. Then in September, we bring you the final at the beginning of September for the 25-26 millage and budget.
I have a question real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if you should be able to answer, I guess. When we did the workshop for the capital plan, and we went through all of the Castaldi and Jacob's report, Mr. Tatum had made a point about reducing some of that cost. Did anybody go back and look at that? Are we projecting to use those same costs, or did anyone?
Yeah, that was just at that point in time. We'll be bringing back another update. I know that
Okay.
at the end of July, we're going to bring along the discussion on that high school AAA. We'll have an update that we'll bring for the capital plan then, because it was just presented to you guys so early. It will even capture some of the other items that were discussed in that plan, especially including what we see for the charter school proportionate share of that sales tax, since that's part of the capital as well too. So we'll be bringing back to you with adjustments from everything that was discussed.
And with what was just passed in this session too. All of the different
Correct.
things. Right.
It'll be a lot more updated.
Right.
And then even when we do that workshop, if there's any changes from that point in time, from that presentation to the final budget, we'll bring you update as that one too. Remember, when it comes in September, we usually present the general fund, and then we have a capital plan update. So we'll be able to bring you what that capital plan looks like at that point in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, so this slide is kind of presented a little bit in that trim format with some of the preliminary data, basically through June 16. So the general fund, remember, it's budgeted with your incoming source of funds. So you start out with your beginning fund balance, and then we also have the new revenue. Then we also have the transfers in from other funds. A big part is capital that transfers over to cover the allowable capital expenditures that the general fund incurs, and it also includes some from grants as well. So that would be the special revenue fund. Now, the preliminary budget, at this point in time, when you do add those three pieces together, the beginning fund and the revenues and the transfers in, you're looking at a sum of about 729 million. The expenditures, the projected for the 25-26 new expenditures or expenditures for that fiscal year is approximately 645 million. Now, we also have broken out so you can see the other funds that do get brought over, carry forward over from programs that are in this current 24-25 fiscal year that are related to the restricted programs and the assigned programs and expenditures that are already assigned with purchase orders. And then we're also adding that new categorical that they added with the FEF penny funding that I get to, which is the academic acceleration options categorical. And that is for the AP, ACE, IB, those particular, that type of program. But I'll get to more of that as we move on with this. So, let's see.
You want to ask it now, or do you want to wait?
Oh, go ahead.
End of it.
I'd like to ask it
Yeah,
now
go
because
ahead.
it's
Yeah.
relevant to this
Perfect.
slide. So, two questions. Number one is on this slide here, what fill rate for our positions did we use? I'm curious. Meaning 95% fill rate, or I'm just curious, what did we use?
It was 95%.
95%. Okay, and is that, what have we done in previous, like the last three previous years?
97.
97, so we've gone down a little
So,
bit.
right, and one of other slides, we point that out, that
Yeah,
we
coming up.
that's what, one of our general fund assumptions for this year. Now, by doing that, we will see less of a budget change that we bring to you as we start to reconcile things during the year. It won't be as large of an amount to adjust that out for the vacancies because of doing that. Now, it could lead to maybe there's not as much of a carry forward as before, but at least it'll be more to the, closer to the actuals.
Right.
And what we have seen literally in the last three years of her and I working and doing this. So we felt pretty comfortable to put that assumption in for this year after we had.
Are you saying 95? I'm sorry to jump.
Yeah,
in. Are you saying 95%
Right.
is what you've seen our vacancy fill rate? Or
Pretty-
is that what you're saying?
It's
Yeah.
a little bit higher, but I would be cautious to do anything more than the 95%. So, you know, if we don't fill our positions, and we may have more vacancy, but I
Sure.
think that moving from the 97% we were using to the 93,
95.
I'm sorry,
95.
to the 95, sorry. It's, you know, a little conservative, but
Gotcha.
it has less risk.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry, Mr. Tatum.
That's okay. And then at the end, I'll ask this question if it doesn't get answered. And the question will be, so we start out this year with 104, we end this year with 53, and we end the next year with 53. So that means we're spending $50 million of savings basically. And so then at least according to these numbers, we won't have that $50 million of savings next year to spend, right? So
So that
what's the
would
plan?
So the plan is, so that would be for the budget guidelines, rules that we follow.
Yeah.
That would be if everything in these categories actually were to have been spent
Right.
down. Typically, where you see like a carry forward of 23 million. From that, over the past few years, we see between 3 and 4 million actually of that carry forward actually did get spent, and then it becomes another carry forward again into the next year. So if you were to apply that, would that actually get spent? But the thing is if it did get spent, we're showing you what it would be spent if all of that did get spent. Now, if you saw only that what we seem to actually spend out of that carry forward, you would be left with an additional 18 million in your fallout at the ending funding, but ending fund balance, which is what we typically see when we bring the actuals to you, and it's much higher because it did not get spent, although they have to be reserved and have to be spent within those categories. So it's not like unrestricted that you can spend it on just anyone's raises or any expenditure that you want, that kind of a thing. It's got to stay within those pots. But if you did that, and as I had said, if we only spent 5 million of the 23 that got carried forward, you would be looking at pretty much an ending fund balance then of 73 million instead of the 53 million. So that's a exercise in applying to show how, wow, we have this budget, and it's a conservative budget, but you have to do that in case those carry forwards were spent, that this is where it would land. But that's why in practicality, when we see it in the actuals, it's not because it didn't get spent.
Well, let's say it were to get spent, because that's what you said, like, just in case, well, let's say it did get spent, then there would be a very big budget cutting exercise for the
There would.
for the 26, 27, because we wouldn't be carrying all this money forward. So if it got spent for whatever reason, we hired a lot of people, there was a big hurricane and we had to use a bunch of operational money, I don't know, to replenish school supplies or whatever that might be. That's my concern, is that if it were to get spent, then there's this big budget cutting exercise that would have to happen. But go ahead.
But
What am I missing, though?
23 million of this, the majority of that 23 million are restricted funds
Right.
that the state gives to us for like AP, ACE, IB, CAPE programs, educational enrichment categoricals. And those have to be spent for specific reasons.
Right.
So those are always reappropriated, because you have to reappropriate them.
In the
if you
same
don't spend-
categories.
Right, in those same categories. So even if you spent down every dollar of the ACE, AP, IB program, that's not going to affect the rest of the general fund.
Which
You know what
then we'd still have some more budget cutting we would need to do, because those funds would be restricted and we wouldn't be able to use those for budget cutting, so to speak.
But already
right?
that's what's in that beginning fund balance. So even if you spent down every dollar of that, it's not going to hurt the rest of the operating budget that you're using with your assigned funds, unassigned funds, sorry.
But as you said, for the other positions, you would be looking at, if much of this was spent down,
Yeah.
you would be looking at some cuts across the board. And we'll be able, as we go further into the budget, to show the different changes and stuff, because, and when we look at the reserve, while we were in that phase, building up this general fund, when we had the ESSER funds coming in, we're now at that point where we're now on the back end. So more decisions will be made as we went, last year we had quite a few cuts. And so this year is pretty much a window to be able to start reassessing as we go into this. What will those programs be that we have added? Maybe we get to see some of the better ROIs on some of the extra positions that got added in when there was the learning loss occurring, that we did bring in those positions, because we did have a lot. While some things got cut last year, some things did get absorbed into the general fund. So
That was paid by effort.
and that was meant to have this year to be starting to use some of that buildup. So it will still be something that we'll be looking at as far as positions and expenditures across the board as we keep going through these different fund bases, and the ESSER plane lands, as Kevin put it one day,
Right.
when that funding has been chewed down, spent.
And so we had an ESSER savings account. I understand that. We're kind of using up that savings account. I just, from the big picture, and I've been to 5 school finance conferences now, and I still don't have it figured out. But, when you start with 104 million, almost 105 million, and you end with 53 million, that tells me that you've spent $50 million of your savings. And obviously that is the ending balance, and we don't have another $50 million to use next year, right? Because that is the balance. It is 50. And there probably will be more money there because we won't hire everybody and everything. But you guys, I'm just pointing that out,
To err on the side of being conservative with that and watching how we make those expenditures, definitely.
That, and just, are we going to have to make some big cuts? I mean, are there going to be, I don't know. I don't know. Just, that's what I see. Big, that's literally our fund balance is projected to be half of what it is starting this year. And it's $50 million. And then let's say it was only, we didn't hire everybody. And so really it's at $70 million. That still doesn't give us $50 million extra to spend. Maybe that gives us only 25 or 30 million extra to spend next year. And then that just keeps coming down. And
Mr.
Right.
Tatum, I can.
Yep, go ahead. Mr. Chapman.
These are all great insights and
Yeah.
questions. So, as we all know, during those years, we built up a fund balance and used ESSER dollars to pay for expenses along the way because it was money coming from
Yeah,
Washington,
that's right,
and
it's free money.
might as well put it in the put other funds in the bank. So, and as you remember, the last really in this budget as well, the last two budgets we've landed that ESSER plane, right, and we're now parked at the gate. So ESSER is over. We had a nice flight,
Yep,
right?
yep, that's right.
And that was probably first class Cathay Pacific to Hong Kong flight has now landed, right? We've had a nice flight. Now we're about to board our flight back to Tampa, right? Which probably is more of Southwest or Allegiant heading back to Tampa in a middle aisle as we now
You have to pay for your Coke and your coffee.
yeah, as we now, we now have no more ESSER dollars, and we're getting less and less funding from Tallahassee, right? So, this is similar to a budget you saw last year, where we were going to spend, on paper, $50 million out of the fund balance, because on paper we have to show that almost by law.
Right.
So we're getting more to a realistic budget because we're on Allegiant now in Southwest. I'll probably hear from Allegiant, Southwest. I fly those airlines, so maybe that will help. But so we're in a more realistic budget era now. So we're not gonna see these high fund balances anymore, right? We're gonna see a little more realistic fund balances. And for those who've been following this, we did have high fund balances because we were budgeting that way during ESSER. And so now we're going to have a little more realistic fund balances. The difference is, and 2 points to make, is that also part of this is our projected enrollments for charter schools, for example, right? We have to put that money aside over what they believe their projections are. We talked about staffing and about if we're fully staffed. All our departments, which I think is a good thing, don't spend every dollar we're budgeted for, right? We try to contract and spend as responsible as we can, so there's leftover funding there. So I think that's why we see in the end, I think last year we were projected to be this time of year at a 6% fund balance or something, and we're ending up perhaps, we're going to get to that slide, at a 13% fund balance because of those things. But the other point I'll make is as this chair gets replaced, right, I think the next superintendent and team will have to make, which is a good thing, some good budget decisions over the next couple of years, meaning looking at lowering our what we pay for utilities, for example. I mean, some we can't control, right? FBL charges what they charge, but looking at that, healthcare costs, positions that maybe over time may need to be reprogrammed into something else to save money over time. So I think those decisions are coming, but that's not to sound the alarm to our great employees. That's just saying, as Tallahassee's going to give us less and less money, it looks like we are going to have to make decisions over the next couple of years to land that Allegiant and Southwest flight now, right? And land that safely over the next couple of years so that we are sustainable for a long time. So those decisions are probably coming in the next budget, in the budgets to come, as we look at how we can provide the quality of education we're providing, but maybe be a little leaner at it, both at the district and at the school. And the costs that are on the margins, the utilities, healthcare, things like that, we can try to do our best to lower, to save here or there. So I think that's the task of probably the next superintendent and the team to do that over the next couple of years, to land that plane. So we tried to give you a budget this year that is a little more conservative, a little more realistic of not showing such an expenditure and revenue gap, but showing by, like you said, reducing our fill and all these other things, that showing something that's a little more realistic of that gap. And one of the two biggest parts of that gap is the carry forward, the 24 million in carry forward, and also that charter school projection that, sometimes usually comes in a little lower, and those funds come back, that department spend is lower, and that we don't fill all our positions. So, but again, that's the team being eagle eye during the year to make sure that all those alarm bells go off if we go off track from this plan.
Right. Do we get a quarterly budget update or something? Is there something like that, a little report or something called am I thinking of?
Are you thinking of the calcs that we get from the state?
Well, the only reason I'm asking is, I guess up until this point, it seems like either once a month you give us a fund balance update,
Right.
and I've always looked at that and gone, "Oh, it looks healthy." And I don't dig too much further. I'm like, "Well, it looks healthy."
Right.
But now it might be interesting to just get like a quick quarterly budget summary of how's all this spending looking, like how, so that, because it appears that it's going to be a little more important to keep an eye on this stuff now than it has been maybe over the last couple of years. I don't know what that would entail. I wouldn't want people to spend hours on that.
I think the monthly one that we normally get in our briefings is probably better than the quarterly, because then we'll know of it more quickly than quarterly. It's good. The numbers are going to look different because our fund balance is obviously going to be down from all the ESSER
Right.
blimping.
Right.
Of course.
Because I do give the budget where each month, where I bring to when the financials are
Right.
coming in, I give to where, with the amendments that got put at that point in time, what it's looking like at the June 30 for the fiscal year. And then there's the extra one where we're like, okay, and if we're sitting with these other items, what is the year end, could it phase out? So I would think that as I bring that statement to you, I'll focus a little bit more on the column that has amendments up through that month and where that budget is going to lie at the end of the month. I'll probably point that out a little bit more to be able to explain that so we can see where it's landing, and maybe make that comparison to the original budget that we bring to you in February, so that we can see how it crawled and it's taking shape.
Yeah, it might be interesting to see like what the charter school fill rate is, or this is how much we budgeted and this is how much we're actually spending. And then what's the fill rate for our positions? Like we budgeted at 95, but through the first quarter, August through October, we're only at 92 or 93, just to kind of keep a closer eye on those big ticket items that affect that. Go ahead.
And Mr. Tatum, maybe it would be helpful is maybe something in early September after our 10-day count, and we see where enrollment is at and where our allocations hit and all of that, and maybe either in a workshop or in board briefings, we can give you a little update about where we were or how we hit our mark on allocations and enrollment, and where that now puts us going forward until the third calculation, which is the most, one of the most important ones, whereas kind of that's the second most important part. But I think I interrupted Gina.
Yeah, no, but that's what I was going to say. It's kind of the timing, right, that we get through negotiations and we make decisions on, raises and things like that. And then all of that, has to hit the ledger, and then, so you can really do a good forecast out, because that's 60% of the budget. So that's probably why you've been getting, like, later in the year is when we kind of say, oh yeah, this is how much we have, because now we have all of the information. So
Yeah,
we're,
typically November is when the retro pay hits after the negotiations have been.
Or NASB this year, it was
Oh,
last month,
That was.
right, but we,
unfortunately.
right,
Yes.
but I mean, we can try to do, take a look at vacancies on a monthly basis and see what that looks like, which we intend to do anyway, right? Because we're changing the vacancy rate, so, you know, we want to make sure that we're not surprised, you know, we want to know that sooner than later, if we're tracking higher in our fill rate. So,
I would just like to not
Yeah.
be surprised either, as we're going into a different, because I think up until now, like I said, I've just kind of looked at the ending fund balance and went, well, it looks good, you know, you guys got it, but
But-
as we're getting into a different era of spending, maybe a little closer
More facts.
attention.
Okay.
right, but things happen like in third calc where the state gave us some extra funding. They gave us that special state funding that they say they're not going to do
Right.
coming year.
And that wasn't until
then-
March that we got that.
And then we got in survey 2, in the third calc, we got the actual numbers reported by the charter schools. So we can also track, you know, what we think those are going to be, and then kind of do an in-between forecast
Okay,
to help look forward.
great. That was a
Yeah,
good
give you
conversation.
more of an
I
update.
I
Yeah.
appreciate your time. That's all I have. Thank you.
Think, I would just say real quick to what Mr. Tatum's saying and a little bit from everybody. I don't, I think that what you all do, school financing, especially for the district like us, I don't think people understand how difficult the process really is. Mainly because, you know, we don't know how many kids are going to be here come August 11th, right? The state gives us projections, how many we're going to have, how many are going to go vouchers, how many go to charters. What is frustrating for me, just as we're overall talking about budget, is that we have to play this game of here's a projected number, and we don't get that is not resolved until later on the year when numbers come back that say actually no, in your district you actually, you know, charters only took 500 instead of 1,000 kids, so the extra 500 were in your system, but yet in July, as we're all sitting here talking about a budget, we don't know where they're going to be. It's the wildest, if you think about it, it's the wildest thing ever that we have got to build a budget based on a number that we don't even know is coming. And we've got to hold back numbers to give to a charter school or voucher, whatever, that may never happen. And we're going to, it's crazy. It's crazy. And so I think it's a very complicated system. And I don't have any answers on how to make it easier, but I think it's just, it's wild. And it's nothing like, because you hear from constituents all the time, well, my budget at home, wrong. It's nothing like your budget at home. It's not, because at any point, you can remove that money that you set aside for your trip in the summer and pay for the new car tires if you need to. We can't. The money that's in a bucket is in a bucket and is locked up. Like, that's just one example. So it's really nothing like a home budget. And so I just, I commend you all for going through this, and it's definitely not easy. We knew we were going to come as we were in ESSER mode, and this is everywhere. This is not just Manatee County Schools. I mean, go look what Sarasota's dealing with, all municipalities, everybody. When ESSER was cut, I think we did a really good job in this district of not spending that. We put it into our fund balance instead of spending it elsewhere, and that started from the very beginning of COVID. You know, we didn't over expend our, have these expenditures that if we didn't have the fund balance we had, we would be in trouble, right? And so I think naturally we are going to have to make some decisions, though, to Mr. Trading Point. We're going to have to make some decisions. I don't think this budget's any different in the last 4 or 5 years, though. We've never hit our quote-unquote budget, right? We've never filled our budget. We've never gone over our budget. The chart at the end, I think, is the best. And we'll get to that. But I just want to say thank you all for what you, it's crazy. This is great conversation, we're all having. And I know you guys have it every day, all the time. But I just want to say how crazy this is. Ms. Bray, you were lit up.
Okay. When we're talking about fund balances, I just spoke to a group last week about how finance for schools is. And it is, it's all, and my key word for that group was projected. Everything that we do for the district is projected. We're projected to collect this much in taxes. We're projected to collect, like the last presentation in millage. We're projecting this is how much the charters are going to get. So it's all projected. It's almost like you're building a pretend budget, and then you hope it's going to land in there. One of the things that I'm looking at on here that's kind of a little disturbing, unassigned fund balance. And I don't want to be the negative Nancy up here, but I am. And to Mr. Tatum's point, the first number we see on this slide is 104 million. But the last presentation we did, and what we're going to talk about tonight, is the scores. We had this kind of a fund balance and unassigned of almost 80 million, yet our scores aren't up here where I think they should have been. So we had the money to get there, and we've been on this high with ESSER dollars, and we've done all of that. But to me, the scores didn't, we spent all the money, but the scores didn't go up as high as I expected. So that's the biggest thing I have. So that's my soapbox issue. But the unassigned, 79,886, that's what you gave us on as a forecasted for 24, 25, or 20, this sheet's what I'm looking at.
Right,
Right.
right, the projection.
Right.
What is that one? I don't have that one.
It's the one that we get for our briefing.
Oh.
Yeah. And
Remember the,
right. Because on the slide you're showing here, all of these reappropriated. And all of these buckets, okay, for the public, I want them to know that restricted program carry forward is what?
that would be,
On the slide. It's like 23 million.
yeah, she wants to know what the type, what it is.
You're right.
That
The
What are we using it for?
19
Your
the nine-
special-
No, the
Yes, the
19,644
19 million.
restricted program carry forward, and we're gonna reappropriate that to the, again, restricted program.
So we
What is
have
that?
grants that are inside of this restricted, so that's your special revenue fund. So well, hold on, no, take that back. No, it's not.
Right, there's some local grants that are in there. That's about $1 million of that total.
Okay.
You have, again, the ACE, AP, IB, CAPE programs. The state trues that up in the third calc. So the reason why you carry a lot of that forward every year is because they're not receiving it until third calc.
Right.
So they can't really spend it down at that, make a plan to spend it down at that late in the year.
So we fund it, and then we refund that program. Am I correct?
So
Because we're
those-
still doing the
so those
program.
funds, yeah, the programs
It's the
exist.
school
Right, the
starts
programs are
before.
that's what I want to make clear to people. We're still paying for all of those specialty programs. And then at the end of the year, they say, okay, you had this many, this is how much money you're getting, and we're just refunding
Right.
the general fund
That
that
pays
we
for the next
pulled
year.
it from.
Right, and that's
Right.
why we
And
have
that's
to look
what
at our
I,
cash
that's what I was
flows.
trying to make, I want to make a point of. We're still paying for these programs.
Yeah.
We're just paying it from a different bucket until we
Right.
get the actual funding from the state, and then we kind of reimburse ourselves.
Right, and it's a little bit delayed, which is
Right.
why we do at the end of the year, we do a cash flow on the expectations, or actually get started on it now, so that we can then take it to the financial advisors that we use, and that's when we look to see how much we think we would be needing for that tax anticipation note to help with that flow.
Right.
To make sure that,
That we're funding that, right, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Assigned program carry forward. That's a 2 million, too, correct? So
The
that's
assigned
the-
programs.
Right, we've already assigned those funds. And they didn't use them yet, but they're going to. So we reappropriate to the next year.
Yes.
Okay. But the one that bothers me the most is the unassigned fund on the sheet that we get at the briefing, yet some of our scores didn't go up. So that's kind of bothersome to me. To me, I see, oh, we could have had a lot
So
of reading coaches.
Some of those in the unassigned, we still have expenditures. I mean, even salaries do come out of that because general fund pays for those. You would see that in unassigned. We don't put them in a specific program to say, okay, these are for the raises. So you got some of the regular operating expenses that's not targeted for a particular pot inside of the unassigned. So I guess that's where you could say, if you're thinking about where are your savings sitting at, the leftover, or not the leftover, but the fund balance that could be getting used up, as Mr. Tatum was pointing, it would be in that unassigned.
Right,
But it's still for the operating expenses.
right, and, right.
And remember,
I see, go ahead.
But just remember, Mr. Spray, and I think you know this, but just for the audience, that it's kind of balancing your point with Mr. Tatum's point, right?
Correct.
Like,
Correct.
we're just trying to find that balance to make sure we're not adding more reoccurring costs to our fund balance, right? Because, so yes, there might be some money there to spend, perhaps, but if we add personnel off of that, now we've got reoccurring costs, right? If it's a program, that's something that, if we spend some money on and it doesn't work, but we're contracted, we don't want to keep it going either. So the team works very hard on finding that balance of making sure that we're not adding any reoccurring costs to the fund balance. Because then we're going down Mr. Tatum's route of spending money down our savings and eventually not having any. So it is that balance. And again, a lot of that 104 million in there is that is that budget that we have to put aside, to your point, because of projection and assumptions, when most likely almost every single year, 90% of the time, we end up like we are right now with that money not being spent. Because we also don't want to just spend money to spend money either, right? I again, to my point earlier, I like to see departments aren't spending all the money they have. That makes me know that we are not just spending to spend. We are being fiscally responsible, but there is a balance there. I just wanted to add that point.
Okay, well,
But I agree with you. We've had this conversation in my briefings before. There's no question. Like, if we have extra money, let's absolutely spend it where we should be spending it, which is in the classrooms with extra help for our students and teachers and things like that. But I will say the catch-22 of that is, if this would look even 8.68, the fund balance we believe will be at the end of 2025, 26. Let's just hypothetically say we had spent 20 million on more teachers or more whatever, that 8.68 would be more like 5.68 right now at this point. So this past year, if we would have spent more on the reading coaches, whatever, and I'm looking at Mr. Jensen because I know he's been in my briefings, but I said this, like, hey, let's put more resources in. And now I kind of look like almost, I don't want to say this a hypocrite, but now you're looking at these numbers, it's very difficult to do that because we don't get the real numbers until the third quarter. It's too late to put teachers in there. We can't do it at the beginning because our projection of charter schools, etc., doesn't really allow us to do that, to keep a sound budget if we want a budget at 868. So we're always in like this catch-up mode because we're never, we don't know what the actual real numbers are. I mean, we do see it in our schools even before the calculations happen. We see them because you got to staff, right, and put kids in places. But I do agree with you. I want to make sure we're spending the money in right places, but I also didn't if we have been spending 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, whatever you want to say for extra programming to get our scores up, that 104 right now at 25-26 would be less, which means the total fund balance at the end of 25-26 would be less.
I get that.
So it's kind of,
yeah.
I mean, I
It's
don't
a
disagree with
balancing
you
act.
wanting to
Right.
spin it in the right the place for sure.
Right. But there's other, like the unassigned, there's other areas I think we need to invest in our people, not just in the classroom. There's other support staff that I think, when we go through that whole budget and we look at, the bargaining units and all of that, I think there's an area that gets slighted. I'll just say that for now,
Sure.
and then I'll have an offline, so.
Mr.
Okay.
I think one of and the team helped me here, is some of what gets eaten up by the fund balance a little bit is that money we spend that it's above and beyond what we're given from the state when it comes to transportation, ESE, and safe schools, right? So
Correct.
So as the board has learned over the years, it's somewhat of an unfunded. It's a partially unfunded mandate where we spend almost $10 million more on transportation, ESC, and safe schools, which almost adds up to $30 million over and above what the state gives us. And so the fund balance does is the fund that takes care of all of that. Right now, we make up that difference by what I keep mentioning about the department's not spending at all, we're not fully hiring, the charter enrollments don't go as high, so it then balances out, and that's why we project a 5 or 6% fund balance in June, but yet when we get to June right now, we see it more higher than that, right? So it's that's the cycle of the budget,
Sure.
which to the chair's
Right.
point is very complicated.
And our enrollment doesn't go down like not enough kids do go to charter and vouchers. They actually stay in our schools, which is a good thing. It means we're doing good things with that. And that's another way to make sure we're good, is to make sure our programming and stuff is still top notch and we're the best choice in the county to go to.
And that's something that I mentioned too, is the programming, like the restricted, the programs there. We don't know how many kids are gonna sign up for some of those programs. You have no clue. And it's all projection. I think the whole education finance program needs a revamp. Who would take that on? I don't know. I don't know how other states do this. I've really never looked at how other states. I'm guessing we all have to do it the same. Who knows? Anyway, okay, I'll get off this.
Ms. Dalton?
Just one way that I explain it to regular people is that, okay, so you're going out into the world, you're going to get your first job, right? We're going to give you this chunk of money for the coming year, right? And then next year you'll earn your first real paycheck, but you're only going to get paid once a year. All right, so you're starting out, you're getting your job in July 1st, you start your job, you have amount of money, right? And this is how much money you have for the coming year. Okay, now we've gone through our first year, we haven't been paid. We're going to get our first salary paycheck, even though we started our job July 1st, we're going to get our first paycheck in March of the following year, right? So you've got to figure out how you're going to hang on to that money, projected, again, what you think you're going to have to spend it on, what bills you're going to have to pay. Oh my gosh, Amazon has now raised their rates again. So if you want to have Prime, you've got to adjust for that. All those little things. Oh, congratulations, you're about to have a baby. Oh crap, I didn't plan for this. All of those things that come along, but you're only going to get paid once a year. And you're going to get paid when there's 3 months left in that year, not at the start of the year. And that is one way I explain it to people so that they can understand that, we don't get that chunk of money July 1st. We get money, some money, but then we don't know how much it's actually going to be balanced out to because of bills and and what we owe somebody or we think we owe somebody, and oh look, the bank's giving us some money back.
More
You know,
kids in the seats.
more kids in the seats, and you know, all those extra things. So as a regular person, it's hard to understand that. But if you can look at it as you only get paid once or twice a year, and you get paid at the end of the year for the year you're currently in, I think it's a little easier for people to understand.
Good point.
I think that was it.
That-
Yeah, very good.
All righty. Okay, so, so with the budget that, at this point that we're presenting, again, like we had all mentioned, we would be looking at that assigned, unassigned, general fund percentage of 8.68%, and, which is slightly above that, the strategic 8.5%. But as we've explained, some of the different reasons why we're still budgeting for these, that's taking us up above that, is where we're landing. I'll put that in a better language, specific language, when we bring a final budget to you in that executive summary. Okay. So now on to discuss some of these, some of the material legislative changes for the 25-26 budget from DOE. So the district's unweighted FTE, it's increasing 2,170. And out of that, we have 960 going to that Family Empowerment Scholarship Program, leaving a net change of 1,209 for both the district and the charter schools. Now, last year, and I think we brought it a few times to the board, we did budget this past year when we were sitting in this same position where we had the numbers. We did budget for the district to have more enrollment than how the math work was falling out, because the way you end up doing it, it looks like the district is having a negative. So with that budget that we did bring to you last year, when we saw the third calc, there was an increase even from what we have budgeted for a staff, an increase in that, while we saw that decrease in the charter schools. So we are still trying to make sure, as best conservative land, that the plane on the enrollment to where we are managing our staffing for those students that are projected to be here and in the district. Another.
So I'm sorry.
Yep.
The Family Empowerment Scholarship student, that increase.
Yes, it.
But that's not including the chart. Is there
That's
a
not
charter
charter.
school in here?
Yeah. So I didn't
missing
list
it?
the charter school here. The charter school forecast for 25-26 is actually 12,332.
Oh, you listed on the last page. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry. Oh,
I think.
Is it on the? Do I have it somewhere else?
Or no, it was on the millage. I'm sorry.
I think. I think we
You
mentioned
put the
it on-
projection on the millage. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, and now, in comparison, the third calc was 10,914. So, I mean, so that's a
Almost two
difference of
that.
1,418, just in comparison to what charter schools are projecting for next fiscal year and where the count came in just this past.
Do we know the difference? So, like last year, do we know the number of? I know they were definitely lower than what they were projected. Do we know what they came in at last year? Like how many they added last year? Like they had like 500 kids, and they were projected for 1,200. Do we have that?
We'll get that number.
I mean, we can. That's fine.
I'm looking at Mr. Jensen. Mr. Jensen, can you ask Evan to get the number of what the projection was in August of '24
Yeah.
compared to what charters ended up in third
Like
calc
yeah,
of
last year the
25?
budget. I'm sure we go back. I go back to last year's
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
But I just
I think we have that in our emails somewhere.
because again they get to choose. They get to choose the number of here's where we think we're going to be. And I mean, we see it every day, every quarter with a business that says we're going to project this earnings and these
I
sales,
almost
and they
want
don't
to
hit
say
it.
it was like 12,700, or
Yeah, we'll
it
we'll
was
get
a
the
very high one.
yeah we'll get what
Okay.
they projected
All right.
in what they projected at the beginning of the school year.
Right, like they're- like right now.
And then where they ended up third calc,
Correct.
right?
Thank you.
Right.
Okay. Thanks.
Right. Okay, so A new thing that occurred this time that we haven't seen in the last few legislative changes was changes to the program cost factors, which is used in the base FEFP funding for the weighted FTE. These changes that they occurred in, I've got them noted in bullets, that resulted in a reduction of 2.1 million in revenue, and it equated to 390 weighted FTE. So that's what this change in the program costs alone is impacting on this district's budget. And then the last bullet, we have the base student allocation. It increased $41.62 per student. Just to note, last year's was 101 was the increase, and we thought that was unfortunately low last year. But at any rate, so this $41.62 results in an increase total of 5.4 million in the FEFP funding. And to put that 5.4 million increase into context, we have budgeted 3 million for the world language textbook adoptions, and then the classroom teacher and other personnel that used to be the TSIA, called the TSIA, that was is going to be 5.6 million. So just adding those two together, the increase that we're seeing in the BSA is in just those two categories is more than the increase that we are going to be receiving in the BSA.
We got a couple questions. Tatum and Felton.
I just want to make a general comment to all of us that, and having gone to the finance conferences and then the FSBA conference over the last couple of years, it's very clear that the legislature is not going to provide big education funding increases. And so rather than asking for more money and complaining about us not getting enough money, I think it would be more productive to think about how to reduce costs with legislative changes. And, you know, my hobby horses are bringing down the cost of building schools by making the SREF optional, and then doing away with unfunded and partially funded mandates, because the mantra of give us more money for education is just not hitting well with the legislature. And that can be seen, like you said last year, only $101, and now this year, only $41. So that tact of just going to them and, you know, beating on their doors, give us more money, there might be a better tactic to take, which is lower costs.
Yeah.
You know, how can we lower? And there are ways to do that so that we can still have an adequate amount of funding to do what we need to do. But the strategy of give us more money is, it's not going to work. It's not working. And it actually kind of, I think, turns off, from my perception and talking to legislators who are the ones in charge now, who have the power to make those decisions, it turns them off. Their opinion is basically, you've got enough money, figure out what to do with it. And then my answer back to them is, well, here are some legislative changes you can make to help us. And I'm trying to have some of those conversations. But that's just a general philosophical thought that the era of give us more is probably over. And so now we might want to consider, okay, well, help us reduce costs.
Yeah. Limit some of that, yeah.
Yep.
Ms. Felton?
Thanks.
To Mr. Tatum's point of we give you enough, figure out what to do with it. I think that our legislators forget, and again, you know, they don't listen, but I think they forget that trying to do more with less is not always the way to go. I like to explain it as education is a bridge, right? We want our kids to get from this side, you know, where they have low reading scores and everything, and we want to get them across this bridge of education to where they are now, you know, productive members of society on the other side of the bridge. And if you take a look at the Skyway as our bridge of education, because we're all very familiar with that, every year they take away one of the cords that holds the bridge up, right? Okay, you know, those big yellow things, everybody knows what the Skyway looks like. You don't really need this one. The bridge is still standing. You don't need this little bit of pylon down here. The bridge is still standing. Well, the bridge is wobbling, people. You know, the bridge is wobbling. We have kids falling off the bridge. And I think that the legislature forgets about things cost more every year. This 40, and thank you, Ms. Sellers, for talking about the cost of textbooks, because I explained this to people going, $41.62 is less than the cost of a textbook. That's less than a textbook. All right, so as they keep taking away these things that are holding up our bridge of education, and they want to know why our kids' reading scores are low, and why they're not graduating, and why they're not doing this, and why they're not doing that, and well, you don't need the money because your scores are low. Well, you don't need the money because your kids aren't graduating. Well, you keep taking away those supports off of our bridge, and one day the bridge is going to collapse, and then they'll see, your public education is terrible. Because they keep taking away the supports. And I think our legislators, and I found it when we go to Tallahassee and we meet with people that well, they keep saying how terrible public education is, but they don't look at all the really great things we're doing with less. And having been in the classroom, and you guys who have been in the classroom, and you having worked in government, know that when they take money away, you still figure it out, right? You buy your own tennis balls. And as I talked to Mr. Jensen about earlier, I bought class sets of books for my students. All right, so we figure it out. We figure out how to do it, but we're not going to be able to figure out how to do it forever. And eventually, we're going to have all of our supports gone, the bridge is going to collapse, and then they're going to point fingers at us and say, oh, this is all on you. And I think that we need to make sure that the public understands that we are doing more with less every year. Cost of living keeps going up, and they give us less each year, but they don't give us enough to cover that. And so the public needs to understand that it's not that we're wasting funds.
No.
It's that we are doing more with less every single year. I just want to make that point.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think we're wasting funds, but I do believe that, to Mr. Tatum's point, there's a lot of unfunded mandates that are great ideas, but they don't get extra money to accomplish, and then we have to do them, right? And so my question, real quick, before we go to Ms. Spray, textbooks were brought up. The $3 million will go towards world language textbook adoptions. And are those new textbooks because the old ones were gone, like are out of date? Sorry to get you up here, but
No, of course, I'm happy to help. So, as you know, the state keeps us on a kind of adoption timeline and cycle
Bingo.
where we kind of
That's where I'm getting at,
rotate through, right? So,
Sure.
This coming year is the time for world languages adoptions. The $3 million, world language is the primary adoption for next year.
Okay.
The $3 million won't entirely be spent on world languages. You also have the shipping on all the consumables. So like every year, like all those student workbooks, everything
Sure.
that we've adopted in prior years, we
Gotta
have
be
to pay the shipping on those, which is
Yeah.
actually fairly substantial. And then we have some smaller instructional materials purchases in there as well.
Gotcha.
Like maybe some K3, K4 intervention materials and whatnot. But the primary adoption next year is world languages, which is smaller than your adoption
Science
years
and
when it comes to
history,
ELA, which is
yeah.
coming up, math.
Yeah.
et
So
cetera.
that's part of my point, and maybe you can, to Mr. Tatum's point is, I do believe when we go into the next legislative session and when we get to some of our priorities, I think we're gonna do it in July or whatever. That I do believe that asking for more money is dead in the water. I believe that asking for them to dereg some things, deregulation, right? The SREF potentially, etc. But also adoption, like books. For us, I would like to see. So what's the time period for the books again? I mean, everyone may be a little bit different, but
the state has them on a 5-year adoption cycle.
Okay.
But you can delay them doing like gap years on them.
okay.
Typically,
Like 5 years is kind of. I mean, books may not even be like dented in 5 years.
correct.
I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm just being, I mean, we have online books. You get this stuff online. For us to have to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars because the state has a contract with McGraw-Hill, et cetera, That's all we're doing. We're doing it because they have a contract.
Yep.
So some of those deregulation things is what needs to happen, and you save money. And I'm not. We're all we're just doing what you're doing. You have to do those, right? We all have to do them legally. But that's where this is. If you want to have us be able to spend what we have, and I don't necessarily disagree to a certain extent that we do get enough, but it's not that we don't get enough. It's that there's unfunded mandates in these regulations that we need to dereg to have us use the money where we want to be able to use the money. And so I just saw the books, and so I wanted to reiterate that. So thank you. Ms. Spray?
That's actually where I was going. The consortium and the FSBA, legislative priorities are already starting. We just got through the session, but that's one of the things that I wanted to do was start looking at, we're forced to pick the state curriculums. We're forced. Am I correct in that, Mr.? Come on back.
Theoretically, we're forced.
Yeah,
but
right.
Not really.
Well, remember, we tried to change that policy, and we can change the policy locally, but the state doesn't require us to do it. We can pick a non-Florida Department of Education curriculum.
Right.
But our local policy says that we have to pick one, though. I'm just making
So
that.
we need to look at our local policy.
We did.
We did.
But we need to
Couple
look
years
at
ago.
it again,
Okay,
is what I'm saying.
sure.
There's a new board. I think we need to look at that again. To Ms. Felton's point, she spent her own money to buy books for her classroom for a specific thing that, I don't know, was it listed?
It
Not
was,
listed?
yeah, it was part of IB curriculum to buy novels for them to
Okay,
read.
there you go. So, the unfunded mandates as well. But if you're saying that we don't have to pick everything that's listed, yet there's programs that's been out there that people have worked with and support, but I'm being told, well, they're not state listed or funded. I mean, we're making these book companies very rich, is what we're doing. And that's, I mean, millions and millions. Just go through the budget every year. See how much we're paying for books, online materials, program, licenses to use those programs. Just go back to all of that and you see where all your tax dollars is going. We're investing in our staff and our teachers, but we're spending so much on the books and the materials that we have to buy. So that's where I would say we need to go with priorities, is to start the dereg and let us do with what we want with our budget and quit restricting us so much. Would you agree to that?
So the instructional materials landscape is fairly complex, and I'd be happy to do kind of a follow-up presentation or brief you one-on-one about some of the unique idiosyncrasies. For example, you are correct, Mr. Tatum, right? Like, we have a local policy that says we're going to purchase from the state adopted lists. That's not a requirement from the state. There's a certain percentage of our money we can use on non-adopted materials, et cetera. But then there are also additional legal requirements. For example, we have to use an evidence-based intervention program for reading in elementary schools. And so there's some other competing requirements that aren't local policy but are set at the state level for certain specific programs at specific grade levels. And then, of course, with a lot of materials nowadays, you end up, when you purchase them, you don't just end up with the book, you end up with the online materials as well. And so a lot of times, if you want to extend the materials beyond the 5-year lifespan that you originally entered into a textbook adoption for, you have an annual gap cost. So you might be paying $50 a student just for kind of the digital licenses and any additional consumables that are part of that program. So there are, even if, for a lot of these programs where we purchase books, you could theoretically keep the books on the shelves, but you would lose a lot of the digital teacher materials and some of the other
Does it
supplemental
update it?
materials
Yeah.
that come with the digital implementation that they don't print into the teacher book. So there's some complexity around that, but I agree with you in that instructional materials is a place we consistently look at opportunities for cost savings in, and it's something we can explore with you if you want to
I think
take a
there
look
should
at
be a
that.
presentation on how that process goes for not only the board, but the public, on even how that each teacher goes in and selects from that list on what they're, of course, we've got our standards, but still. I think that'd be a fascinating workshop, to be honest with you. I'd like to maybe throw that on there.
And because we have to convene an adoption this year, it might be timely, so we could kind of
Yeah.
pair that with the start of the adoption process and do
Yeah.
a deep dive into that process and kind of instructional materials as a whole, if you would prefer.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I think we did a pretty good job last time with our adoption of the
Yeah, yeah.
world history, was it a couple years ago, or history?
We've done history, we did science, and we've also done the personal financial literacy.
Because obviously, the public has to come in, and
Right.
but it would be nice to see what that cost is for us on a 5-year window
Yeah.
of replacing books and anyway.
And understand the 5-year window isn't all subject.
No,
It's-
no, no.
It rotates topic
Sure.
to topic to topic. I wanted to
Correct.
make that point as well. Okay.
And so before I move on to the next slide, the question was raised, what was the projected during this budget last year for the charter schools? That was 12,375. So this year, and remember, and then it came back to be 10,914. So this year, the projected is 12,332.
Right.
So-
So that's my point is of almost 2,000 kids-ish,
A lot.
14, 15, 1,600, we're projecting are not going to be in our seats, yet they are in our seats. That's the issue. So, but
Right.
thank you for finding that out.
Yes. All right, so moving on to some more changes in the legislative budget. The new categorical, this is called Academic Acceleration Options. It's about 7.7 million. This is coming out of what was in the base FEFP funding, and it is for AP, ACE, IB, CAPE, dual enrollment, and early graduation programs. The rest of the set of the categoricals, we are seeing some increases, like Safe Schools, it increased 105 million this year, and that is actually a bigger increase than we got last year in the 24-25 budget. The ESC guaranteed allocation is increasing 2 million, and again, this is one of those categories that is up than last year, because last year was only 906,000 increase. Then we have transportation increasing 173,000. We've got the educational enrichment allocation, that's like the academic achievement, SAI, increasing 543,000, and the class size reduction increasing 1.2 million. And that one is actually up because last year that increase was only 524,000. So they've got 3 categories that actually they improved that increase over last year. Other areas seem to be a little bleak. Now, these are areas that the district still supplements in that unmandated cost category, mandated but unfunded, category. But at least that's something to note, that they're listening a little bit, but.
Yeah. Real quick question. So this is typically this is how like they make compromises up there. The academic acceleration option categorical is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
That was obviously a hot topic between the Senate and the House. Parents got involved, everyone got involved. House was like, no, we're going to fully fund it still. The Senate was like, we don't really know if we want to, et cetera, right? So my question is, what we spent last year on these same things, I know it was in the BSA last year, it wasn't its own categorical, is 7.7 million, is that an increase or decrease in what we spent for those programs? You may not have that answer right off your top of your head, and that's
No,
fine.
it's the same. So if you would
Okay.
have taken the same number of students we had this year,
They just gave, that's what they gave.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So theoretically, it could be less money because maybe we have more kids,
Yeah.
and we'll
Yeah.
see how that works out. But
how
we
that-
do have the
right.
carryover from last year. So, but okay. So that's it. But that's typically what we see. In moving to the next bullet, the BSA increases, but you have these categoricals, right? These categoricals came about. Was last year the first year, or was it 2 years ago?
2 years ago, we lost 5 categoricals rolled up into the BSA.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so these categoricals, we didn't lose any this year, though. We gained one.
We gained
They
one,
added one.
didn't lose any.
Right. Okay.
Right.
But that's typically this is how they finagle. Like they make these categoricals,
Mm-hmm.
they put money in there that you may not use, etc., and you're locked up. And then,
Right.
yeah. Mr. Kennedy, you were lit up. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was, but I just wanted to, along the, sometimes they are listening, because Heather, I agree, usually they're not. And Chad, you mentioned it, like, public input moved people in the legislature to save that funding.
Sure did.
Yeah.
So if anybody is out there and listening, I know it was a hot topic for us locally. We certainly heard about it. So if you made your voice heard out there, thank you, because it worked.
Yeah.
So let's celebrate this rare victory of public input.
Yeah.
Oh, and finally, the school taxable value, it increased 3.6%, which is reflecting a local funding increase of 9.78 million. At the same time, the rate is decreasing. That's going to be charged to the charged to the taxpayer is decreasing down to 3.032, when this past year it was 3.051.
I'll say this real quick, and I mean we don't need to belabor this, but it's something that we've talked about in our the consortium. You know, there's like 51 or 2% of the budget in the state is paid for by the coastal counties,
Yeah.
from Hillsborough, Pinellas, down all the way around to like Brevard or whatever, Broward, whatever. And the reality is, and I get you got to help out everybody, whatever. But I mean, our required local effort could be like, I just quickly did like the 3. If we did it on our taxable value, like it's ridiculous. The amount of money that this county sends to the state. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
If we kept it at 3, we could lower. If they said, hey, fund education in your own county by yourself, we could lower our required mill to like 0.05 and have the same budget. So the reality is like that we don't get the money that's produced here from our own. I mean, it goes everywhere else. But I mean, that's just a whole nother issue. But
Right.
that was your last bullet. So
And that was something I talked about last week. How the 10 or 11 counties
right.
that belong to the consortium is 51 to 52% of the total funding, and we have to share all of that with the counties that can't afford to run their own schools.
It's like we're part of the EU or something.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Okay. All right, moving on to the last slide about, with some more legislative changes. So this one is just a high-level summary of the base funding being at 337 million, and now 93.9 million of that needs to go to those mandated programs. And specifically, the charter school share, excluding the teacher salary increase portion, that projection is increasing by 62.
You did have it on here.
7 million. Do I have?
You did have the numbers on here, so we just
Oh.
I asked those questions before you got
Oh,
to the
okay,
slide. You guys
okay.
found that out, so you do already have them on
Alrighty,
here.
so
Thank you.
anyhow, in the event that, or taking out what is going towards the mandated programs, we are left with a discretionary base funding of just 211 million. So that actually, basically the discretionary BSA funding is 4,860 per FTE, student FTE, versus when we say that the school district is getting 5,372. So I feel like this is usually a good slide that a lot of the CFOs, when they talk, they basically, the question is, so what is your discretionary student funding? You know, who cares about what the BSA is? What is your discretionary BSA? Because that's what we end up having to work with. So, and I had this type of same presentation I think we've done for the last few years, even with the previous CFO as well, too. Alrighty, and then this is the buckets that we teach to everyone about the funding. And so for any newbies out there still watching at this point in time, we'll bring this one up every year. And that first row just starts with some of the stats as far as the FTE students and what we end up with once program cost factors are averaged into that FTE is our weighted FTE. So we have starting in that second row, and we actually even have the symbols if anybody wanted to follow through to see exactly how that was being arrived at. Our basic FEFP funding is $337 million. Then we have all of those categorical programs that are funding, and we've already mentioned that the academic acceleration options categorical, the ESE guaranteed. We've got DJJ, that one didn't change at all. No material changes this past year. You had the mental health and the safe schools, student transportation, and the education enrichment. So we arrive at a gross state and local funding of $403 million. And when we take a look at taking out what is the required local effort, we end up with the net state funding is $166.7 million, and this will be to operate the school district. We do add in our class size reduction of 52.3, and we do add in the other 11 million for the state-funded discretionary supplement to arrive at an adjusted state funding of $231 million. This is the information we use to budget on. Let's see, and again, the RLE is $237 million. When you add in the RLE and that discretionary local effort, the local revenue from Manatee County is $295 million. And that arrives at the total FEFP funding of $526 million. When you look at that $295 million that you see from local funding, and then you look back at the adjusted state funding of $231 million, to that end, what you're saying is that the local taxpayers of Manatee County is actually helping fund this district even more so than the state. So, but anyhow, so if you need to teach anybody any of these practices, this is a wonderful little slide to go to demonstrate how the state funds this district.
I have a question real quick. Would you expound on what you just said, that last comment about basically where we're funding things locally?
Yes, so while we have state funding of $231 million, because we had the state funding from all those categoricals, including that class size.
So can you show me where on this chart you're finding
Oh, sorry.
that number?
Okay, so go
Very
to
bottom
the bottom left-hand corner, the
Okay.
yellow
Yep.
box. That one's the total state funding.
Mm-hmm.
The next two green boxes, those add up to $295 million, and that is the local raised revenue
Right.
to add to the funding to the school district. So that's where I get 295 from local versus your 231 from the state.
Okay, yeah, so we're like 55% of the money comes from local taxes, basically.
Right.
Approximately, or 60, whatever that number
Right.
works out to be. And what's the blue box over there on the right? I'm just curious.
So the blue box, that is the voucher program, Family Empowerment Program. And so 50 million of that total FEFP funding does go to those programs. So we end up with just the district's FEFP funding, which was the local and the state funded, less what went to the charter schools, is what this district has to work with for the district schools and charter schools.
That's the 476 million. on the-
476 million,
Right.
yes.
Okay. And the scholarship money, it's a pass-through for us, is that right?
So,
How does that work?
It actually, they take care of that with the state. That's right. Am I correct? Right. We don't
Right,
actually
They flow it through the FEFP calc.
calc,
Okay.
but the actual funds, the way we end up having to distribute it to the charter schools, we don't distribute those funds to the voucher students.
So if you're a parent, you get it straight from the state or something? There's a big fund up there that it
Right.
gets taken out of. It doesn't.
Yeah, you gotta like apply and all that.
We're not
Yeah, they have
passing
to
it
apply for
through.
that, but that's how they keep their books, all of the funding for all types of children. Okay, here's Manatee County. And so that's why we see the voucher reflected in that, because they're in this county. So, but we won't be seeing that one, but that's what makes it so difficult, because you see so much, but no, it's not ours. So-
I get it. Okay, thank you.
And that's what they think. That's what they think. 1,000 kids, roughly almost 9 million, but about 1,000 kids, like not what was it, like 960 kids, are going to go to voucher this year, is what they believe.
Right.
Yeah.
And where do you see that?
That's just that difference. So it was on one of the pages prior.
So in the blue box, we let you know it's 5,620 for 25, 26. And we mentioned in 24, 25, it was 4,660.
And then there's somewhere in the presentation was like, I think 960
the
kids.
That was the increase.
Yeah, so
was
the state
900.
More
thinks.
new kids.
So that's why last year third calc was 41 million. Now they think it's gonna be 50 million because they think more kids will go to voucher.
So 960 more kids.
Right.
And the reason we don't use the FTE for this is because they don't get all the extra categoricals. Am I saying that correctly? Like, because previously it's actually like $9,100 per student when you add it all up, the BSA plus the categoricals. Is that correct per student approximately?
I don't know if it's 9,100.
Technically, they get a piece of the categorical.
They do. Okay. So why is it only 5,600? Is that
That's the unweighted FTE.
unweighted FTE? Yeah, we're really getting the
We
weeds
don't
now.
have the
Okay.
weight, their weighted FTE. I don't even know I don't know if I've ever seen a weighted.
They're definitely taking some.
They get some of the categoricals, but not all of them, like school safety and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they don't get the whole 91, their fair share, quote unquote, of the whole
Probably took the
$9,100.
15 million and
They-
divided it by.
They only get it of some categoricals. They wouldn't get it of the safe schools.
Oh, okay. All right,
Oh,
thank
that's
you.
true.
Thanks.
Ms. Spray?
When you're talking about the vouchers, if somebody wants a voucher, the state, you said they get it directly to that,
I believe there's an application that
It is.
I'm sure if they went to the.
Goes through
Florida Department of
Step Up, no?
Education-
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Goes
Yeah,
through Step
It
Up.
all goes through step up, right.
Okay.
So if I want, if I'm gonna homeschool my kid, I come to district, say I'm homeschooling.
Right.
I go through Step Up to get my allotted money for my child to then do homeschool.
all right, so you get the money, the family gets the money through the voucher. And
Twice a
they
year.
say, oh,
Twice a year.
I don't know if I can do this.
Right.
I've gotten my, what? How much do they get?
It's half twice a year.
Right, and you get a total of how much per
It's
year?
like 2,500.
20, how much?
Let's say 2,500 each check.
So $5,600 or whatever.
Right.
And they realize I can't do this. And they've gotten the money, and now they're gonna bring them back to our public school.
They can.
How, I wanna know, I guess, not a financial, but,
We'll take them all, Mrs. Spray.
well, I don't mind that. I don't
Even if
mind-
they come
But then
halfway through the
but
year,
then
we'll
we
take them all.
we
but
lost
we
a
lost
certain
the
amount of our.
revenue. We
Okay,
lost that
I'll still
revenue.
take them.
Right, and I'm school choice,
Yeah.
you know, voucher, whatever you want to do. But if you decide that's not going to work for you, what's the timeline? So if they say the beginning of the year, they apply for a voucher for 25, 26 school year. They tried it for 2 months and they've already gotten their first check. They got a new job. They're not going to be able to do this now. Okay? both parents have to go to work. Mom can't stay home and homeschool. So how does that work?
So when there's a survey, and the survey's there's a survey count in October, there's a week in October where they do that count, and if they're not in there yet, they're not included on that count. That count is supposed to come out in January, typically. It didn't this past year. But then they do another count in January. Is it January is the next count?
February. I think
February?
Yeah.
Okay, February is the next count, and then that one won't happen until, is it fourth count that comes out in? Or is that final?
Check.
Final. So the district won't end up getting to see that particular income until those points in time, and
So it's not, okay,
And
a
I
family
actually
has
don't-
3 children that were being homeschooled, and been a life event, and they have to put their children back in our public school. We won't know until the state does the calc, that they decided to, on enrollment, based on enrollment, that's when we would get the funding for that one particular student. But if they've already gotten the funds for the first semester,
We
2,500.
don't get that.
We don't get that.
I don't believe we get that.
No.
We won't get till the next half fund
Not
that
until.
they would have gotten. We don't get
It's split
those.
by
So we
semester.
get,
Right.
we're out of funds and they get to have money to have money.
Because I don't. think we
Right,
get
that's
the
what I'm
next-
saying.
But I do believe there's a
That's
process.
messed up.
I've obviously I know people have done it, but I know that you don't just get like a credit card, debit card with $2,000 on it to go spend wherever you want. Like you've got to go show receipts and things like that into the step up, I believe.
Okay.
But it's still, we're still going to have to teach a child and not have the funds for it.
There's a big gray area over that,
course.
in my
It
opinion.
could have
so-
been done just like charter school. That's a whole other.
Right, okay.
How it was
That was just kind of
It's
like,
done.
okay, that's real foggy how that actually works.
So I've looked at this a lot, and I can kind of clarify some of that.
All right.
So you go ahead and you get your voucher, you can register your child, you're going to do homeschool, you use the Step Up program. They have a website where you can order all sorts of stuff. If anybody's ever looked at it, you can get fake swords and, trebuchets and for history. And I mean, this looks like toys to me, but, all sorts of stuff that you can order through Step Up for your homeschooling. And then there is other things you can use it for. I mean, we used to have problems with people, and they're trying to rope it in. The state has realized that this is an error on their part, and they're trying to rope it in. But we're going to go on an educational field trip to Massachusetts and buy some plane tickets, and visit Grandma. And while we're at it, we're going to go visit a couple cemeteries, and look at
Right.
Civil War stuff, and they're trying to rope that in. They're still not there yet. But yeah, once you get that and you do not, there's no system in place at this time in which you will require that family, you've made it past the first calc and the FTE week where you've done all your counts of the kids for the week, and now it's October 30th and I'm not going to do this anymore. My children are driving me crazy. I'm sending them back to public school. There's no way to re-up that money back to recoup it. Right. And it's the same thing though with private schools, because the money doesn't go to the parent, it goes to the private school for that voucher. And so when it goes to the private school and the parent goes and enrolls their child for that amount of money, the private school gets to have that. And then if for some reason after their counts and everything, the kid's not doing well or the kid's a behavior problem, the private school can kick them back out, or the parent realizes, hey, they don't cover any ESE things here. My kid's not getting the services, which they're not required to do.
Right.
And now, though, thankfully, they now have to sign a form. They have to give the parents a form that says, I understand that my child will not receive ESE services at this school. Mm-hmm. So now parents are being made more aware of it, thank goodness. But they get that money, but now little Johnny's being a behavior problem, and he's not doing this and he's not doing that, and we can send him back to the public schools, and the private schools already have that funds. Right. There's no way to get that back either. And something that folks have found is, I can go to private school and we're good. And people have asked me, well, doesn't that mean that the private school eats all the rest of the tuition? Oh no. They don't understand that oh, I'm going to roll my kid into, St. Teresa of whatever, which we don't have. I'm making one up. But it's a $20,000 a year tuition, but I've got my voucher for $8,000 whatever dollars, and therefore that private school's going to eat it. And no, they don't. You have to make that up.
Sure.
And they realize that, and then, oh, I can't afford this, and now little Johnny is now, even though he's a great student, is now going to go back to public schools, and so we get him then as well. And that's something else that folks don't realize. And with the having no income requirements anymore, they took away the income requirements on vouchers. So that's why the voucher program has exploded over the last couple of years, is because they've taken that away. So you have families who will never, ever, ever put their child in a public school and can afford private school, who are now getting the voucher because they can. Yeah. And so that has exploded the amount of funds going to vouchers in our state. And I think the state is now also realizing that they have a problem. So this is something else that again, that we can address with the legislature. Address those it's not asking for money, per Mr. Tatum's point. It's not asking for money. It's, we are losing funds that should come to us, and giving it to somebody who is now using it that doesn't actually use it and would never use it. It's not that they're trying to place their child because they're failing in a public school. They're never going to go there in the first place. And it lost the purpose. There was a purpose for these, and it was a good purpose. I'm not belaboring anything like that. Exactly, there was a good intention there, but the good intention is now lost.
Yeah.
And so that's something else out there for the public to understand, is that it's, that is the situation that districts find themselves in when they complain about, and we all do, about where is that voucher money going when we actually have little Johnny sitting in the classroom.
All right, I'll move on to the next slide. All right, so this is going to cover the revenue that is funded by our local taxes. Now, the tax collector has provided that estimated value to be increasing 2.8 billion. I mentioned that before. Again, the school district is not increasing the millage rate. The RLE required is decreasing down, and we will get an official required local effort on July 19. We do share this discretionary millage with the charter schools based on a proportionate share. Does anybody have any questions about this slide?
You said the required local effort's going to be given to us on the 19th from the state?
Yeah, the official one.
Right.
Last year, it changed by 0.001.
Yeah, it did change.
They
just
usually
slightly, I remember.
come slightly down from the conference.
Right, it's
report
on
to
one of the
second
charts.
Right.
Yeah, it's on the next chart.
So we'll use this until we've got something different, which is why we end up not going and putting that advertisement in, which gets a little dicey because we've got to have so many days of it being advertised beforehand. So there's been some evenings and some Saturdays to make sure we hit that line, to make sure we were meeting all of those deadlines. Good thing a hurricane doesn't happen typically, oh gosh, during that.
Don't jinx us.
I know. So anyhow. All right, and so this is a slide that we, last year, I believe, was the first year we had this one, so we're continuing it.
No, it's probably third year.
Is it the third year
I remember seeing
now?
this the
Yeah.
first time.
I need to
Good
point
slide,
out,
though.
we have a
Great
typo
slide, yeah.
in the upper left-hand corner. And we didn't notice it last year. Nobody noticed it until this year. That upper left-hand corner is supposed to be billions, not millions.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So anyhow, so anyways, we are looking at, this shows that over the last 7 years, the millage rate has decreased 1.031. So over the 1 mil, it has decreased, while the property values have increased in that particular time period, 42.7 billion. So this is one to be able to show people, to be explaining that, of course, we have the consistent capital projects, that's always 1.5 mil. We have the voted referendum that came back in, that's 1 mil. We have the discretionary 0.748 mil. Those rates all stay the same. It's the required local effort that decreases each year, which is why the millage rate decreases each year.
Okay, wait, let me go back. Discretionary. Okay, that's the one I just asked about. You said it decreased by 0.00, but it didn't.
Oh, sorry.
According
No,
to this
the
chart, it
that's the
stayed the
required.
same.
It is, yeah.
I meant
Right.
the required local effort, and there's also the discretionary
Right.
millage of 0.748.
Okay,
When I was talking about discretionary millage, that was the BSA funding
all right.
in the other slide. Okay. All right, and so some assumptions that we have inside of the general fund that I wanted to bring to your attention is, we've talked about it before, we've got the assumption with an increase in the enrollment for the charter schools, that would be 2 million. We do have 2 new campuses opening in this school year for 25-26. We used a vacancy factor of 5% instead of the 3% that we had in previous years. We've got the book adoption. There is that increase of the Florida retirement system, a cost of $1 million. This year, to alleviate some of the big swings in our forecast, we are assuming that the cost of the vacant positions will cover overtime costs, so we're not budgeting for overtime this year, but the expectation is when we do, it will be because we didn't fill the vacancies. So so that's a new assumption for this year, similar to us changing the vacancy rate. And another item that we are not establishing at this point in time is for a hurricane reserve. When those, last year it was 3 million. The actual spend was in the general fund, and the actual spend for those 3 hurricanes was like around roughly 2.8 million out of the general fund. So this year, when that occurs, unless you guys want us to build it in, but it'll drop that reserve down, we're just going to, the unassigned will handle that hurricane reserve expectations, unless we get feedback from you guys that you prefer to see
We,
a reserve in there.
I'm sorry, we talked about that, I think, last year or the year before, about establishing a hurricane reserve. I don't know, Mr. Kennedy, probably in the longest one here.
I mean, to me, our hurricane reserve is sitting in our fund balance.
Yeah, so it's still in the balance.
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Just hopefully we don't have to use it.
Right,
Well, that's true.
right. And that would just be another carry forward if we didn't have to use it, right?
Right.
So that
And
would
it would
be-
bring your reserve back up, and at the end, so.
Right, okay.
So either way, when the expense does occur, we would have to do that. But it, like I said, it was.
And
3
how
months.
long does the turnaround for getting back from the federal?
Oh, gosh, anywhere from sometimes 2 to 3 years.
It depends on the storm.
And-
They wait
and-
until they have all the total losses for the entire state before they start giving us thresholds and filing. So we're still in the process of filing for all 3 of the
This year.
hurricanes that we had last year.
And the
If
year,
FEMA even exists in 3 months.
right, and the year before,
And the year before was,
we had,
because this year was, it was Idalia.
Small.
that's right,
The year before, we only had the small, was it Nicole?
right,
The year
right,
before,
so we
it
didn't,
was
okay.
very small.
Okay,
We have 1 category still filing out on that, so to be completely finished with a storm and all filings will be about 4 years.
that's incredible. That's why, yeah, give it to the state and let us deal it.
Right.
Do it.
Okay, and.
Yes, give it to the state.
So the next 2 slides is, again, it's just our fund balance policies, where we have the 3% that is statutorily required by the state to reserve out of the general fund. This board has another 2% on top of that for strategic board reserve. And then there is another 3.5% reserve for contingency funds. So in total, 8.5%. So we look at that and we report to that and use that as part of our rules in guiding our budget. So that's those two slides. And so this next slide is a history of that general fund balance reserve percentage. This year, our projection is 8.68%. Now, what I'll point out here is we still have, it's still an estimated for 24-25 until we're completely done. So that's why we put estimated for both 24-25 and the upcoming 25-26. And then I guess and this is just demonstrating where that reserve percentage is in regards to those 3 percentages that's noted in the fund balance policy. And then this last slide is the slide where we basically show you a comparison of where when we bring you the budget in September and where it ends up landing at the end of the fiscal year. So with 23-24 completely completed, the actual ending fund balance was at 15.52%. But the budget, when we brought it to you back in September, we were targeting, with all of the expectations and the guidelines that we follow, was at 8.13%. So again, right now at this point in time for this current fiscal year that we're living in, the reserve, actual reserve is looking to be about 14%. Whereas we brought to you in the budget 8.56% last year. And then right now we're targeting at 8.68 for next fiscal year.
I just want to make a point on this slide. If you look at the ending fund balance from 1920 to where we're projecting for, I mean, just look at how much we've actually increased that to be so stable in what we're doing here.
Right.
So I just wanted to point that out, because we went from 1920 to a 3.84. I was just barely over state.
Where the state requires it to be. And you see how much funds is actually necessary to be planned by a school district up front, and all of those things that ended up needing to be paid for or considered to be paid for at the beginning of a year. So as a CFO, this is very comfortable to be looking at.
Right.
And I know that that there are some other districts that are having a very difficult time in the state of Florida.
Right.
Yeah.
Ms. Tatum?
But that gap there on that chart on page 15, that's all I mean, not all, but it's in large part due to ESSER, right?
Yes,
I
and
mean,
that's why we'll probably forevermore, while these years are being shown, we'll show those years from that fiscal year 21-22 up through how this one had ended, because it was just September 30, 2024 when that grant ended. And you can see where that lift occurred, because they were looking at, I think at that point in time, right before that hit, they were looking at 6.37% was their actual fund balance before they started getting that stabilization fund, grant fund.
Who are you talking about?
So I'm looking at 2021.
2020, okay.
So before anybody even knew about funding for the pandemic, that's what they were looking at. And that spread of, just 3%, I mean, you're talking about 15, is that about 15 million, 17 million difference in the fund balance between the 6.37 and the 3.95.
And that's my point I was making a lot earlier, is that this is the good old days are over, so to speak. It's actually happened in the military after 9/11 when there was a big push, obviously, to do a lot of military operations overseas, and so the military got a big pot of money to put reservists on active duty orders for a long time, and I was part of that process. And then one day I was in an assignment on these kind of longer term, basically being activated out of the reserves. And it was like in October, and they said, the organization unit came to me and said, yeah, in December, your orders will terminate and you're no longer on active duty anymore. Go back to being part-time. And what it was that big, it was like the ESSER money of post 9/11, right? It was this big pot of money that Congress allocated so that all these reservists and National Guard members can come on active duty. And then when it went away, a lot of people went away. And that's why I'm kind of focused on this. I see a very similar thing that's going to happen here, right? Is it the good times were rolling and that money went away, and it'll all work out, but you guys and the next superintendent will get to see how, as a pilot, I will be seeing how well you land the plane. Right? We'll see. If it's a nice smooth landing, wow, it's like didn't even notice we were on the ground, or if it's boom, 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 go around and try again. We'll see. So,
Hopefully there's not too much turbulence.
all right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the end of our presentation.
I don't see any other board members lit up to speak. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you
Yeah,
guys.
thank you all.
We appreciate your
Yeah,
questions
no.
too. It definitely felt like you understood what we were trying to convey, and we thank
Yeah.
you very much. We
No,
appreciate you working
and
with
I mean,
us
I'm
on that.
sure everybody would say this, but thank you all very
Yeah.
much. I mean, you guys, it's probably, maybe kindergarten, maybe harder, but you guys have the second hardest in the district. I mean, to deal with the budget, it's a tough thing. So we really appreciate it. Y'all put a lot of hard work and effort into that. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And it's all the time. It's not just today. And you guys are getting your spotlight today, but you do it all the time. So we really appreciate it. Board, we do have lunch upstairs. I know we obviously have a 5:30 a regular meeting. Mr. Chapman, you wanted me to ask about July 15th. If everybody can look at their calendar, July 15th, 2 o'clock shade. Can we add that to the calendar? I know I'm okay with that.
That is a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
Chad, what time?
I'm good.
What
Two?
time?
2 o'clock? Yeah, I can.
2
It's good for
o'clock?
me. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Is that
How long?
contract negotiations
Hour?
or?
Yes.
Okay.
How long?
Couple hours?
Couple hours.
Yeah, I can't imagine
Okay.
an hour or two
Yeah.
to
Okay.
initial conversation,
I have some quick.
Yes. And can you send that out to us? We can put it on the calendar.
Just real quick, does anyone have an update, or maybe even Ms. Cox does, on applications coming in for the superintendent? How we'll see them, where we can, any
Nobody's.
updates on? Yeah, but what's the process? Just so we all know, like how. when they
It'll
start
go to
getting-
FSBA.
Okay.
FSBA will then send it out to us or to Laura, and then Laura will send it out to us.
Okay.
But I don't think we've received any yet.
Okay, so they go to FSBA first, and then they do whatever they do with them, and
Yeah, and
make
then
sure
we-
Mickey Mouse isn't applying and stuff like that, right? And
Yeah.
It's complete.
Yeah.
Okay.
We won't get them until like. Yeah.
So they'll be directly emailed to us, and also posted.
You guys first,
Yeah. Okay.
and then I'll send it to
Okay. So just keep monitoring our emails, basically.
Yeah.
That's what we need to be doing. All right.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to know.
So it's gonna come directly from FSBA?
Nope. From Laura.
Oh, from Laura, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know. What's the process?
Yeah. To discuss more about this stuff too.
Okay.
But good question.
Great. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. All right. Are we good?
Yep.
Everybody good?
Yep.
All right.
Set.
We'll see y'all
See you tonight.
later tonight. We're adjourned.